All right. Well, good evening, everyone. It's now 5:30. I'm going to go ahead and kick off our pre-commission agenda. Pretty self-explanatory. Do we have any housekeeping items? Agenda questions? Commissioner McKinney?
Madam President, I do have a couple of questions on items 4 and 5 on the agenda if the director has a few minutes.
I think we do. Go for it.
Director, items 4 and 5 relate to the renovations, improvements, et cetera, for the new Meeker facility. And we discussed this at length in our last commission meeting, but I just wanted to, with these additional items here, are we still on track relative to the estimates of costs, et cetera, that you gave us last week when we talked about this? Or does this represent any kind of a significant change from what we discussed?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, no, this is still on track and was anticipated. So one of these items is an item we talked about last week, which is the construction manager, general contractor contract. And then the other is for the physical security in the building, and they are included in our current estimates.
So we're still looking at something like in total numbers, we're looking around 22 million total to get that Meeker facility.
Right around there is where we're looking, yes.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
Are those all your questions?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Any other questions for the director? All right, Director Head.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam President, Commission. It's always a pleasure to visit with you. Today we're excited to have the integrated 5-year work plan in front of you and some other decisions with regards to Linder and that concept. But wanted to share with you some activities throughout this week that we've had as we seek to build together, build safe, and build more. First, wanted to address our project down at Lake Hazel and Eagle. We've had quite a bit of feedback over the last week as the closure occurred for this construction project. Here on the map, you can see the area that is closed to all traffic there in yellow. But what we've been experiencing and what the neighbors have been experiencing is quite a few people going past the road close to through traffic there at the roundabout at Amity, coming down and then choosing to bypass the standard detour route on the arterials and go through the neighborhood. Our team in developing this project had identified a number of improvements, but what we heard was that it wasn't quite adequate enough. And so the team has worked hard to quickly respond and install additional stop signs. We're installing speed bumps in the neighborhood. You can see the locations for each of those, really to try and discourage people from using this as their cut-through route. Initially, we were hearing even about semis and other vehicles going through, and sometimes it takes time for people to adjust to the new routes, but really we have paid close attention to this and the team has responded. This is important in this location because this is a route to school. What you see there just up to in the upper right-hand side is you see Hillsdale Elementary, where we recently made improvements at a school zone and additional crossing there. It's also a YMCA and a city park. And so really improving safety during construction is important to us. We have, as a result, we are really working to incorporate this type of detailed review and going all in on protecting the neighborhoods with our detour routes as part of our construction process, and are including as part of our final design a review of what the detour routes may be and making sure that we are fully in, and we'll let the neighborhood tell us that they want less as opposed to asking us for more. So really appreciate the quick response of the team. Our communications team has been doing wonders on social media communicating. They've gotten on the private groups of a number of these neighborhoods so that they can communicate through the construction process and we can really hear what's going on.
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney.
Director, just a quick question back on that previous slide.
Yes.
I'm curious, how do like GPS navigation systems and such get updates? So, because I can imagine an unfamiliar driver coming through here and not knowing what's closed and where, likewise truckers and so on. How does that information get to those companies?
So we do see that Google and those companies do get updated with the construction closures. Some of that happens through the feedback of the public. We also do work hard to make sure that the routes are identified well in advance for people. So those who aren't familiar with the area would naturally know to go a different, would have signs and indications to take a different route around. But I'm not exactly sure the exact process. I'm happy to look into that. I do know that this has showed up now on a lot of the major navigation sites, that closure is there, and they're not being routed directly through that. And they generally do try and route people through the more major streets. Some companies, we have had experience where they do route through neighborhoods just as the fastest route, and that does become a challenge. So we'll look into that. I also want to talk about just some of the efforts that we work to build together with the business community and the others when we do have construction there. And this video is just one that our team helped produce for the businesses in downtown Eagle, and was shared with them that they could put on their social media. And I just thought this was a great little video to show some of the effort that we go to really support those businesses. I love that she passed to herself. That's pretty good.
The city of Eagle have a mascot.
Very active mascot there. A lot of energy there. So today we had an additional closure for our downtown Eagle Mobility project there at State and Second. This closure was necessary for to work around some ongoing utility work and trying to accelerate the project. So as well as it's a tight space down there, and safety is always a priority. And we were having some challenges with a lot of people bypassing the detour and closure and making some interesting decisions. But really, as we talked about this and talked internally as a team, I'm always impressed by what the team is willing to do to go above and beyond to try and support businesses. For example, with this project, as we looked at this, really one of the reasons this closure happened is trying to get the project done sooner. And we talked to the businesses and they agreed that would be ideal for them. Really, we're trying to wrap up phase 1 of this project, and phase 2 will start after Christmas. So getting out of there during the busy Christmas season is important for a lot of these smaller local businesses. But in looking at it, the team also made a number of recommendations, including exploring adding incentives into our contracts to accelerate the construction process. really, as we've experienced a lot of the construction going on throughout the community, making sure those incentives are incorporated into many of our projects is important. And so we will be including that kind of review as we look at some of the larger projects. We know that we'll have a more significant impact. Additionally, the team is saying, hey, we have some upcoming meetings with lunch provided. We'll go buy food from these businesses. And even today, we brought a little bit of food from downtown Eagle to share, really with the intent of just trying to do what we can as an agency to support the businesses that are there. Additionally, in the small break between phase 1 and phase 2, there are some community events that occur down in this area, and we are looking at how can we use the traffic control that we already have in place with these contracts to support those events and make it easier for those things to happen. Really, the goal of the team is always to try and do what we can to lessen the impacts on the businesses and the residents that are impacted by our construction. With regards to in the area of Build Safe, I just wanted to touch on a public comment that was brought up last week on Bloomfield Drive. This is up on the bench here in Boise. It's near the intersection of Northview and Milwaukee. If you remember, the citizen who came in was concerned about the amount of traffic that cuts through there to avoid that intersection. The team had this on the radar. We have done speed studies and traffic calming studies, which the speeds and the volumes didn't necessarily qualify for our standards, but the amount of cut through is significant. And we don't want to ignore that. And so looking at this, the team is recommending and wants to work with the neighborhood as well as our emergency services to look at closing off that entrance there of Bloomfield onto Milwaukee. Initially with just Jersey barrier, just to test it out before we make any permanent changes there and see what the impacts and how that impacts traffic in that area. Does that improve that issue? If that works, we'll look at modifying the curb and gutter and extending that through and just closing that section completely. Happy to take any additional thoughts from the commission, but that was the response the team has in looking at this. We've known this has been a challenge for a while and want to see what we can do to address this concern.
Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, thanks, Director. I appreciate that. I think that's probably a really smart move, given the patterns that we know about. I would ask that the staff consider blocking off St. Andrews and the anticipated connection to a commercial street, Elder. We talked about this with Boise City staff. They actually required a vacation of a chunk of land, 2 streets that weren't connected, never have been connected. And ACHD did not own any right of way, but they required this developer to dedicate right of way. Our staff said, well, based on our policy of continuation of streets, even though they're 2 different streets and they were built at 2 different times, were never intended to be connected, are now going to be connected. So I would ask that the same rule apply and that we put Jersey barriers up to prevent that going through. If the city insists that this hotel have all this additional frontage at public expense, which I don't think is necessary, it could be just a big driveway, then at least I'd ask that we apply the exact same principle at the get-go rather than wait and solve that. So I appreciate you bringing this forward. Thanks.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, I think that would be a good item that we can bring forward for a discussion with the commission. That's the situation's a little bit different, really, in looking at that, but we can definitely bring that forward for more conversation and look at that.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I think that would be a good idea as well.
And Ryan, before you move on, I just want to say thanks to you and the staff and like to go out together to talk to the neighborhood. So let's coordinate a time and talk through the options with them.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I sent you an excited email this week about this document that the team has prepared. Really, when I saw it, I just had this grin from ear to ear. I'm super excited about all the work the team has done in developing the integrated 5-year work plan this year. It's been a lot of work, but they've listened and really tried to adapt how the plan is presented and prepared to really reflect the things that you've all asked for, as well as what the community's asked for. This is a 2-page front and back, or 1-page front and back document that really summarizes the integrated 5-year work plan in one place. And we believe it does a great job to really demonstrate all the work that the team is doing to build the right things, to coordinate with all of our partners from a federal and state level, as well as to use all the funding that we have available to really get projects done. And so really excited about this effort. I know the team, I don't want to steal too much thunder. I was already warned because they were going to talk about this later during the work or during the agenda item. Just wanted to put up here some upcoming items just for knowledge and consideration. There is a pedestrian advisory group walk tomorrow at Cole and Overland, if you are so inclined to attend that. We also, staff will be participating in a town hall on the downtown mobility project in Eagle on September 30th. I also wanted to put up here just trying to give you a little bit of a heads up of what's coming from a work session perspective. We do have a number of work sessions coming up over the next number of weeks. Wanted to make sure that you all had kind of the heads up of what's coming there. And last, I just want to invite any of you who would like to join the executive team in cooking for staff on October 8th. It's always a fun time. This team really loves it, and we'll have a big breakfast that morning. We do start bright and early, so if you're so inclined, we'd love to see you. With that, Commission, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Commissioners. Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, I just want to send my deep appreciation to you and the staff for the work you did with the Boise Bike Project on the open streets on Sunday. I think it was quite successful. I'd love to get the report back from them. There was a lot of groups there, a lot of folks who were present, a lot of folks from our staff who were helping to tell them about what we do, what other groups do. One thing I would just note is that streets like that, neighborhoods like that, the businesses do really well when their folks can get there by walking and biking as well as by driving. And therefore, when construction happens, it's far less disruptive because a whole chunk of their customers already get there because we provided safe walking and biking routes to get there. And the cities have supported that. So it's always a little more challenging when construction happens and the only way you can get to some businesses is by driving. Then we start to see a significant economic impact on our construction. So I just wanted to do kudos to our staff for participating. And I'm eager to find out which neighborhood is going to have the Open Streets Festival next year.
Ustick.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Director.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be at ease until 6. Thanks. Yeah.
Top and fist when you throw them back. And who doesn't want a good throwback?
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to everyone that's here joining us online and in person. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Please join us in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next order of business is to adopt the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and are action items unless otherwise noted. The consent agenda is enacted by one motion. There is no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. If a commissioner or citizen would like, they may request any item be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. I don't believe we have any of those requests. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I would
Commissioner.
move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Well, we've got a small amount of things, but they're big things. So we've got two big items. They're both open hearings. Our first one being the Linder Road, Pine Avenue, Ustick Road concept study. This is an adoption hearing, so I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Welcome, Ms. Brooke Green.
Good evening. For the record, Senior Transportation Planner. My name is Brooke Green. It's a privilege to be before you. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to put forward the Linder Road Pine to Ustick concept study for consideration for adoption. Before I go any further, I do just want to highlight we do have staff from HCR. They're a consultant on this project. They're available to answer any questions should they arise. And lastly, I do want to highlight this is West Ada School District's #1 project in the City of Meridian's #6. To recap, as I've been before you before to give you an update on how this project has progressed, our objective when we started this process was to implement and to achieve an improved corridor as a residential arterial for all users. This is taking into account, we want to ensure that we achieve a level of traffic stress for bikes and peds of 1 or 2. But more importantly, we wanted to recognize the unique characteristics and land uses along the corridor. I would like to take a moment and highlight our community engagement. As we took place, this project was over a period of almost 2 years. We had targeted public outreach. More importantly, it was the surveys, it was the open houses. But in addition to that, we invited the PAG, our pedestrian advisory group, out to the corridor itself to walk it. Tell us, what their thoughts were. What is their vision for this corridor? But more importantly, I want to highlight our property owner engagement. We sent out 2 letters to all the properties we anticipated would be impacted should this project move forward. If the resident did not respond to the first letter, we sent out a second letter, again, inviting them to the table. We had a total of about 61 meetings, and at times we had 1 to 3 meetings with the property owners along the corridor. I helped them walk through what this process looks like. Before we even came forward with an alternative, I talked to them what you can anticipate, how lengthy this is going to be. And lastly, as the alternative that we put forward today, as this alternative came to fruition, I sat with them and we talked about what is this going to look like for you? We talked about what ifs and, highlighted that this is a commission directive and this would be adopted by their elected officials. Quickly, the study area is no further north than West Ustick Road, no further south than West Pine Avenue. However, you have a lot of attractors along this corridor. You have Barbara Morgan Elementary School, you have Tolley Park, and of course, the Meridian High School. I want to give you some highlights about this segment. Linder Road is the longest north-south corridor in Ada County. Only ACHD corridor that connects 3 cities. It's the last segment north of the interstate to Chinden for enhancements. Essentially, it's a bookend by 4 to 7 lanes in each direction. We're looking at a regional corridor, one that connects our communities. We are on the last segment of several years of design and construction that brings us to this evening. We brought 3 concepts out to the public. Concept 1, which was your 3 lanes with the shared use road on both sides. Concept 2, which is your standard 5 lanes. This is the preferred concept that's moving forward as a staff recommendation. Came in at 45.6% in public acceptance. And then lastly, concept 3, 5 lanes with a shared use road. The concept that we're putting forward for recommendation is concept number 2. This is your standard 5 lanes. This is a multi-use pathway on both sides, 11-foot travel lanes, 2 11-foot travel lanes in both directions, an 11-foot median island with turn pockets. I'm going to quickly walk you through the enhancements for the corridor. This is a 1.5 mile segment that we're looking at. I'm going to start with the first visual up top. This visual depicts all the enhancements that we're suggesting. Our first enhancement, I don't have a cursor to show you, it's there at Meridian High School. It's the pedestrian hybrid beacon to allow pedestrians to get across for kids needing to access the high school. And that's where we're going to see our first installment of medians. The medians, they have dual purpose. It's access management. In addition, it's a traffic calming. You're going to see this installation and suggestion of these medians throughout the corridor. And lastly, go to the bottom slide there, section 2. And this is where we're going to start seeing our first of several property impacts. The yellow boxes represent properties as a result of this expansion of Linder Road. These would be the homes that we need to purchase. Why is it we're having to purchase this? And we're going to get that question asked a lot this evening. It's because we're encroaching on the residents themselves. If you look to the 4 or 5 homes right there, all of those property owners would have to back into a 4 or 5 lane road. As a result, we're going to have to pursue purchasing. In addition, the multi-use pathway is encroaching upon their home. Some other enhancements along the corridor. Again, you're going to see the suggestions for the medians. And again, this is where we come to what we consider the pinch point along the corridor. This is the space where we're seeing, as of today, a lot of dense housing that fronts on Linder. Many of these property owners were ones that I had the one-on-one meetings with in the evenings. Many of these property owners are well aware that this is coming. We've talked through the what ifs. What is that going to look like? How long and what the duration possibly could look like. But I also want to highlight both at Sandalwood and Chateau. This concept does not have roundabouts suggested on it. Rather, you're going to see the typical intersection there at West Chateau Drive. This is where you access Barber Elementary School. Continuing along, just want to highlight again, this is what that pinch point does look like. Those are the number of property owners. I also want to take a moment now to talk about the properties that we don't have yellow boxes around, because we're going to get a lot of questions about that this evening. It is too early and premature to determine whether or not will we be having to purchase those homes. We didn't do a complete survey as of today on this project because this is a concept level. In design is where we're going to implement the survey process. Is it at in design where we're going to make that determination whether or not we're encroaching enough on those properties to either some sort of compensation or if we're going to need to purchase those. So while those houses in the yellow boxes, we're confident that we're going to have to purchase, it's what those homes on the outside, the ones that you don't see, but you think we should be. And until we do the survey work, it's too early to tell. This is again what that standard 5 lanes will look like should this be adopted this evening. Continuing along the corridor, this is where we get to Tolley Park. You're going to see it there on the left-hand side. This is also where you're going to see another pedestrian hybrid beacon suggestion. But this is also where we come to the point about the culvert. The culvert itself. There's 2 approaches we could take. The 5 lanes does show that we are going to have to tile it. However, again, in design and in conversations with the irrigation district, will we make a determination whether or not we could keep it daylighted. If you've been out there, you'll understand that the slope to 5 Mile Creek is pretty steep and it's not too far off the existing road itself. Do we have space on the west side to potentially look to be able to ensure that we can keep that daylighted? We won't know until we take the steps in design to do the survey work. But there's 2 ways in which that multi-use pathway could look. It could be right there adjacent to the roadway, or we can push it back further away from the road itself. And again, the bottom slide there, it indicates what Ustick looks like today in Linder Road. No additional enhancements than what you see reflected. The total cost for this project is 39.3 million. A good portion of that certainly is in a right of way. Construction's about 17.8. To note, 35 parcels as of today would have to be purchased should this concept move forward. And again, the additional parcels, we won't know until design whether or not we're encroaching on their property enough to have to purchase. The staff recommendation before you today is to adopt concept number 2, the standard 5 lanes. This concludes my presentation. I'll stand for questions.
Thanks, Brooke. Commissioners, questions for staff? Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah.
Oh, you just unmuted yourself.
I just have one question I didn't ask at the work session, and that is because this has been described as a major arterial, basically, of more importance perhaps than Meridian Road or 10 Mile, because of its length. There'll be a lot of presumably traffic using it to get across. A number of major arterials have sound walls because the closeness of the neighborhoods, existing neighborhoods, but I haven't noticed any sound walls being contemplated in these to protect the livability of those neighborhoods. Is there a reason why we didn't include sound walls?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, that is certainly a discussion point we could have in design. As of now, we're trying to make a determination which concept would be moving forward. We certainly recognize many of the residents' concerns about the vehicle traffic being right. In some cases, some homes now will be backing up to Linder, but that's certainly a discussion point we can have, and certainly one that we can make sure that we put in under additional considerations should this be adopted.
Yeah, it would also affect the cost, obviously, because that would be a significant cost. Thanks.
Commissioner McKinney.
Thank you. Yes, Brooke, just a couple of quick questions. Just to sort of summarize, you had the 3 concepts, and we're looking primarily at concept 2, which I'm inclined to favor as well. What are the primary differences between these 3 concepts? Concept 2 is a 3-lane section, concept 1 is a 3-lane section. And what then is the difference between 2 and concept 3?
Certainly. Madam President, Commissioner McKinney. So the 3 concepts before you on this slide do depict what the differences are, and I'll go through each one. So you have the 3 lanes of the shared use road, and I do have an example of a shared use road, but this preserves the homes along the corridor, especially in that pinch point there on Sandalwood and Chateau. To attain the 3 lanes of the shared use road, however, would have to be the installation of 2 roundabouts, both at Chateau as well as Sandalwood. So that's a major difference. Standard concept 5, the one that's before you for consideration, this is 5 travel lanes. It's got access management throughout the corridor with the medians, and they all have medians. I apologize, they do all have medians. This one is a multi-use pathway, 5 travel lanes. And then the 3rd concept is 5 lanes with a shared use road. And Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, if I can flip to a slide further down, I think I'm going to be able to highlight that a little bit better.
Sure.
But the 5 lanes with the shared use road provides us an opportunity to preserve home on the west side. And it's going to take a moment to get there, but let me get there. Okay, 3 lanes with a shared use road. Concept 3, this is the 5 lanes with a shared use road, and you're going to see it a little bit depicted there, but essentially what you have on the west side is the shared use road. Those are the homes we're able to preserve. There's what we consider a sidewalk. In addition to that, the buffer space, tree-lined buffer space. In addition, you have the 4 travel lanes. This shows just between Chateau and Sandalwood what it would look like. You have the median is either a tree-lined median or it's going to be turn pockets. 2 11-foot travel lanes, another buffer. However, on the west side is where on the east side is where you're not going to see the preservation of homes, but rather multi-use pathway. Quickly to get to that, to achieve this option, we would also have to provide for roundabouts. The roundabouts reflect there. What it does is it allows vehicles to get to their residence, turn around and go the other direction. A little bit better depiction of that is right here. This option allows us to preserve the homes that are not in the yellow boxes. However, all the homes on the west side will be the ones in which on the east side will be the ones that we have to purchase. The ones on the west side are the ones we're able to preserve. This would require 2 lane roundabouts installation, both at Chateau and Sandalwood. That is the big difference between all 3.
Okay, so basically the option 3 in the end, you don't save a lot cost-wise going with option 3. The difference in cost is, I think, 2 million out of 40. So it's not a big savings, and it puts in that unusual or very uncommon concept of that shared parcel. I note that we have this letter here from the city of Meridian, and they agree that concept 2 is superior, and they have specific concerns about the proposed shared lanes that are part of concept 3. And I share those concerns. I think this concept 3 would be bending over backward to save certain parcels at the expense of many others, and in the end, not getting a significant benefit from it. So that's good. I appreciate that information. Let me ask just a couple more follow-up questions. Ada County Paramedics has an installation right there at Ustick and Linder Road. Did we get any specific input from them regarding their concerns about, as an emergency services provider, their concern about this corridor?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, they did participate and provide feedback there. We actually sought out feedback from the first responders regarding the shared use road to see if it would be an option. The concept moving forward is your standard 5 lanes, certainly something that they're able to, accept as they navigate that space. So they are in favor of all 3 options. They did provide feedback through the process.
Okay, good. Then let me just ask one other question. I don't know if this is something you can answer now, but the options, all the options that you've showed have the center medians. What is the relative construction cost of a 5-lane section with medians versus without them? Do we have any kind of ballpark numbers that we can kind of think about on that?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I do not have that broken out.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I look forward to hearing from residents and others on these options as well. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Green? Okay, I have a couple questions. Brooke, could you speak to, since you talked about at the opening statement, how this connects all 3 cities, across 3 cities, right? Obviously this chunk is within Meridian's jurisdiction, but could you share a little bit about what each of those cities' visions are for their land use plans along this corridor, or how this dovetails into those plans at all?
Madam President, I cannot speak to what the 3 cities' preference are for their land use. I can speak that we did work in concert with the city of Meridian, who did express desire for a 5-lane.
But did they talk about how this is in alignment with whatever plan, since the number of homes are going to be removed, how that's compatible or not compatible? Did they talk a little bit more about that?
Madam President, I'm really not in a position to say whether or not this is compatible. We did invite City of Meridian to this presentation this evening, and they are unable to attend, but I don't want to make any generalizations or assumptions. We do know that this is compatible essentially if they accept it and they put it forward. We did have the hearing at the City of Meridian and their Transportation Committee, and both of them expressed their desire for this particular project.
I mean, do you know what their plans are to do with, is it just going to continue to stay single family residential or something else?
Madam
Like Justin
President,
looks like you
I'm-
speak to that.
Again, we invited them tonight and they were unable to attend.
Madam President, members of the commission, Justin Lucas, Chief of Operations and Infrastructure at the Highway District. I'm glad to speak on behalf of the cities. No problem.
Thanks, Justin.
So looking at the long-term growth patterns along this corridor, what I can provide is this. North Linder Road, as you know, from Chinden to State Street, due to the growth projections of the city of Eagle, the city of Star, is projected as a need for a 7-lane facility. North of State Street on Linder, ultimately the plan is that Linder would potentially connect up into the development that is approved already up in the foothills. So when it comes to what may happen or can happen on the northern section north of this area, I would say the growth is substantial, ongoing, and likely to continue. As based on the city's approved comprehensive plans, previous entitlements, and just what we see going on in that area. South of this area, there is an overpass planned, and that will be constructed with ITD in coordination with ACHD. The south area is very interesting as you go south of the freeway. There has not been as much urbanization in that area yet. Quite a bit of entitlement. Some growth has started, but when you get into that southern area, North Cuna and South Meridian, the growth in that area also is planned to be substantial, ongoing for many years, and likely will continue. So this corridor is unique in that way that it crosses the river and it will also cross the interstate. There's not that many corridors in our community that have that unique designation. If that helps answer your
Yeah,
question,
that's what I was looking
yeah,
for, Justin. So I
that's
appreciate
what I
that.
can
And building off of that point, have you guys looked at, obviously with the growth that's forecasted, what type of data do we have or Compass has about growth that would be feeding onto that corridor? Do we have anything specific that could enlighten us, I guess, for that piece?
So what we have, commissioners, is the travel demand model that is administered through Compass. It's a constrained model. It's essentially a 20-year projection. I think the growth that is likely to impact this corridor goes beyond 20 years. So the 20-year projection gives us a feel for what's potential here. Beyond 20 years, it gets a little bit harder to know what's going to happen. What I can say is that ACHD's master street map, which is developed in coordination with all of the cities and which is intended to provide kind of that broad long-term vision for this overall county all the way to build out, hopefully, has designated this corridor as essentially 2 travel lanes in each direction or a 5-lane facility, essentially all the way from, I believe, Floating Feather all the way down to Cuna. So it's essentially from Eagle all the way to Cuna is planned and anticipated as a major corridor. As you know, the development pattern in this area is arterial dependent. There's not a lot of other options. The collector network is not strong in much of this area, and it is arterial dependent.
Thanks, Justin. And I think my next question is, with this 5-lane configuration as concept 2, that's the favorite of the city of Meridian. Recently we've seen, and I've been on multiple walks and conversations about how other similar-ish 5-lane configurations are behaving in residential/commercial areas, specifically Cloverdale. We've seen multiple deaths over several years just recently about how the high speeds are contributing to those deaths. And obviously with this being on a school, how, from your vantage point, or maybe from the consultant's vantage point, how have you baked in some safety measures within that concept too, to address what we've already seen in other 5-lane configurations?
Yeah, Madam President, members of the commission, thank you. This concept design contains many features that are recent additions, I would say, into the toolbox at ACHD when it comes to the design of these types of facilities. One I would like to call out, which Brooke mentioned and which existed in all the alternatives, is that center median. That is a vertical feature that we're now including in essentially all of our arterial roadway designs that provides, I think, an additional measure of traffic calming. It can also provide pedestrian refuge at specific locations where it enhances the pedestrian hybrid beacons and the crossings that we put in. I think the other key here, which is included in the preferred concept and the other, not all the other concepts, but some of the other concepts, is the multi-use pathway, the buffered pathway, where we're taking essentially the bicycle traffic and the pedestrian traffic, separating that from the roadway itself. This has a narrowing effect on the roadway because the curb dimension is closer, and it also provides that buffer space. I believe it's 5 feet on this project. And then the pathway, which really, I think, we've seen great success with as we've implemented this on other projects in the county. So those are some of those key features that are intended to help us meet that LTS 1 or 2 guidelines that the commission has provided. And this recommendation does do that.
And what's the projected speed that we're striving for within this section?
35. Yeah, it's 35 miles per hour.
And then has the city of Meridian committed that if we go with concept 2, that they would actually landscape those medians?
We do have that
Okay,
commitment.
great. And I asked when at our last work session for, we have several examples of that shared roadway configuration, and I asked for some examples and data on like how that's working, and was wondering if you have that for us.
So I do want to show you, this is not reflected in concept 2 that's moving forward. Rather, this is what's reflected in concept 1 and concept 3. This is Whitewater Park Boulevard. Essentially what you're looking at here is all of those front-on houses. Instead of being a front to Whitewater Park Boulevard, we're suggesting the shared use. So actually it's in practice today. You're going to see the parking there. You've got that on one side of it. This is not necessarily one way. They can certainly go either direction, which is a little bit different than what we're proposing. They're not pulling out into a roundabout to navigate this space. They are pulling out onto Whitewater Park Boulevard. Another place is Duncan. That's not reflected up here, but that's another location. Something to note about these shared use roads in practice today in Ada County. It's context sensitive to their locations. And so what this is, we think, is the best example of what could be put on place on Linder Road. And that's why we bring it before you as an example. But every other location, it's context sensitive just based off of that one space.
Great, thank you for doing that. And then when you talk to homeowners, you mentioned that you talked at length, right, with all of the homeowners impacted by particularly concept 2. I wanted to know, how did your conversations go with them about the trade-offs with 1 and 3? How did that element happen?
Madam President, Commissioners, certainly I will say of those who resided on the east side between Sandalwood and Chateau, a good proportion of the residents in which I spoke to are in favor of their home being purchased. We at length had these conversations of what that compensation package looks like. The residents on the east side, there are several residents on the east side who expressed concerns that they would prefer to stay in their residence. They're happy with the shared use road. It does give them an option to be able to continue to reside and age in place. Some of them expressed concerns about the shared use road. A lot of them didn't necessarily want to front essentially a 5-lane road. And so a lot of them still wanted us to move forward with purchase. I can tell you in those conversations, they were incredibly hard conversations. These are people's homes we're talking about. And that's why we didn't take this matter lightly. That's why we sent out 2 letters to the property owners along this corridor, should a concept move forward that we're going to have to purchase their home. That's why we had at minimum 1 to 2 to 3 meetings with these property owners during the duration, a 2-year duration of this project. From the original concept of we're going to do this project to the actual, what you see today, recommended concept, we talked about this. And over time, several of the residents in these conversations started to understand the compensation package a little bit more. And over time, some of them changed their mind. I'm not going to speak on their behalf. Many of them are in the audience today to tell you what their preference is. Many of them are in the audience today to tell you, purchase my home, I want to move on with my life. Some are in the audience to say, allow me to age in place. And those are all considerations that are before us. But I will tell you as staff, we took the extra effort in this situation to ensure that we had these conversations with them. Specifically, do they like the shared use road? Some of them do. Do some of them want to be purchased? Some of them do. And I'm going to let them have their opportunity to speak to that, express their concerns, have their voice, tell you what they'd like to see move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President,
Oh, Commissioner McKinney.
I'm sorry, Brooke, just to clarify, you mentioned, I don't know if I misheard or if it was stated wrong, the residents on the east, most of that, you say the majority of them would prefer to be purchased. And of those on the west, it's a lesser number who are in favor of being bought out, and a larger proportion, or at least there's some who are in favor of the shared path concept. Is that correct?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, yes, several of those who reside on the east side, the ones on the bottom of the screen, have expressed, please purchase. We'd like to move on now that we know this is coming down the pipeline. Let's note, that whether it be concept 2 or concept 3, we're going to have to be purchasing the homes on the east side. So I think they had come to an understanding early on. Those on the west side, several of them expressed concerns that they'd like to age in place. Some of them expressed concern and stay. Some of them expressed concerns like, well, I don't want to be adjacent to this large road. Please purchase. Those on the corners, something to note that's a little bit different about concept 2 and concept 3. Concept 3 requires a roundabout. So therefore, we're going to have to purchase all the homes on the corners. Some of those residents want to be purchased. Some of them don't want to be purchased. Several of them are here tonight to talk about that. And some of them are really concerned about, you know what, you're encroaching on my property far enough. Where are we at? Are you going to purchase? So Madam President, Commissioner McKenney, it differs. I will say the east side residents came in early, understanding that they'd like to see a purchase.
Madam President.
Commissioner Gold.
Yeah, so the city apparently supports concept 2 and it's the most expensive. Was there any discussion with the city about how that impacts their other priorities or how other projects might shuffle around based on that?
Madam President, Commissioner Gold, we did invite the city today to vocalize their concerns or their preference. They did provide a letter. It's before you. They would prefer that we have a 5-lane as it pertains to their other priorities. That wasn't part of the discussion. Certainly through the integrated 5-year work plan, that discussion will arise. But we did invite them today to provide any type of staff or city input beyond the letter in which they provided you.
But the budget impact wasn't directly asked or talked about.
Madam President, the last time we had this discussion was when it was brought up by this commission, but we did not have that discussion as it pertains to this project
So
or their
no.
preference.
Okay, that's fine. All right, any other questions for staff? All right, so this is where we turn it over to public comment. So we've got a lot of folks signed up to testify. So we're going to do folks in person first, and then we'll do folks online. We'd like you to, so that the kind of the routine is you come up, make sure you speak directly into the mic so folks online can hear you. Introduce your first and last name, your address, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the commission, ask questions, share your thoughts and feedback with us, all that good stuff. But Justin, did you have something before we?
Madam President, members of the commission, thank you. And sorry to interrupt the public comment process. I did want to provide just one piece of information as you listen to the public comment and as you're considering things tonight. So what we're bringing forward to you tonight is a adoption of a concept study. You know, we are not asking you to approve the purchase of any right-of-way. That is a separate action that the commission takes through its budget or integrated 5-year work plan process. As of right now, the purchase of right-of-way for this project does not reside within the adopted integrated 5-year work plan, and I do not believe it's in the draft integrated 5-year work plan that you have before you tonight. So I just want to make that clear that as we get into the discussion about right-of-way, there is no current plan to purchase right-of-way. The purpose of a concept is to give clarity to the city, to the potentially the impacted residents, so they know what the plan is. When it comes to the execution of that plan, that is at the discretion of the commission as we move forward.
Thanks for sharing that, Justin. I appreciate that. Commissioner Hanson?
Question, Justin. So the staff report references that when we adopted the budget, we did approve something with respect to this. And I'm not sure what that was. There's some reference back to the approval of in the budget. What was that reference to?
I believe, Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, the reference in the budget was just the dollars associated with the study, this concept study. No other dollars have been allocated to moving the project forward. That's something that would happen through a future budget process and would be at the consideration of the commission.
And this is in the capital improvements plan though, right? The CIP. This is designated in the CIP. Is that correct?
The adopted CIP does include
4-year-old.
It's adopted in 2020, but I think there was an interim update to that. It has this Remember, this is a 1.5 mile segment.
Right.
I believe a portion of the segment is in, but I think, Christy, correct me if I'm wrong, it's only for right-of-way preservation only. So construction of this project is not in the currently adopted CIP. It is something we would certainly consider in the CIP that we are updating based on this concept design and input from the city.
So the amount that was, so after we approved the budget, the CIP from past years, the amount that Compass was asked to put into Communities in Motion and approve this as Communities in Motion and in the TIP, Transportation or Traffic Improvement Plan, was 5.7 million. So that was just done this month, earlier this, or at the end of August. We discussed this at Compass. And I said, well, none of the options that we're looking at are anywhere near 5.7, they're 17 million and on up. But staff said, no, go ahead and approve 5.7 million. So what's the next step? Do we have to then go back to Compass just a month later and say, actually, none of the 5.7? So I'm trying to figure out where the 5.7 falls, what obligations we have. And because it's in the CIP, the impact fee calculation is built on that. Is that built on the 5.7? Or if we adopt a concept that is closer to 40 million, will we have to change the CIP before we can charge impact fees? So I'm trying to figure out where this falls, what the process is.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson.
Budgetary obligation.
So as an ACHD project, the funding and the inclusion or non-inclusion in the CIP is at the sole discretion of the ACHD Commission. What the Compass process is a reporting process where they track large projects and simply include them in their long-term reports. The $5.7 million estimate was drawn from the current CIP that has a portion of this project in it, which is, I believe that's where it was drawn from, which is an estimate that we have. When we update those documents, we use the most recent adopted estimate from the commission. If the commission chooses something tonight that is different than that, we'll update those estimates, but it's not something that impacts the timing or the commission's ability to fund the project. It's just a reporting mechanism that Compass provides.
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid the process of later on the commission being told, you've already approved. If we approve concept 2 or any of the 3 concept actually, that we would then say, well, you have already approved this concept and this amount. So you have to approve this as part of the CIP or as updates to the TIP or the Communities in Motion. So how does that work?
Madam President, members of the commission, at every stage of the process, the commission has the authority to move forward or not. That would be with the adoption of every budget, the adoption of every integrated 5-year work plan. If at some point in the future, the commission chooses to go a different direction, the commission would absolutely have the authority to do that.
Commissioner Hanson, we can add this to a work session then.
Yeah, that
week
would
or
be-
something, like we can
Yeah,
talk
that
about
would
it
be
at a different
good
time.
because when we look at the budget, the amounts associated with the concepts aren't taken apart and saying, well, actually, we could do less. We just accept that number because we've previously approved a concept. And so we have to accept that concept with respect to the budget. I'm just trying to figure out, because this is by far one of the biggest costs associated with a concept we would have approved. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to proceed with public comment. So Ms. Stacy, can you call the first 3 folks? So first one on deck, please come up to the mic, and then we've got a couple chairs, so feel free to come up and sit just so we can have a smooth process tonight.
I'm just gonna address the audience that a lot of people have put down Millbrook and Warm Springs, and we'll be calling you for the integrated 5-year work plan if you want. And then if you're for St. Andrews, that's gonna be in public comments.
We're just talking about the Linder Road.
We are just talking about Linder Road. So I'm calling up Joseph Flores, Clancy Anderson, and Harlan and Linda Otto.
So no Clancy, but
No, okay, they're not Clancy. So then we got Julian Castaneda.
Okay. All right. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Joseph Flores. I reside at 1532 West Chateau. That is at the northeast corner of Chateau and Linder. My concerns are that I understand that with the burgeoning increase in traffic, that these roads have to be improved. I understand that. And I understand that my property would be affected by that. What I don't agree with is the concept there, because if you look at the map, you'll see that all of the homes that are on the east side of Linder up to Chateau are scheduled for purchase under this program. And then we jump across the street to my house on the corner and we're saying, hey, it's fine. We'll move 2 lanes in there on each direction, increase the traffic by my estimation, probably 400%, because I have been on 10 Mile Road and I can't see much difference between Linder being 4 lanes and the traffic being any different than it is on 10 Mile. So if we're going to bring the traffic probably 10 to 15 feet closer to my home, and I'm expected to say, yeah, that's okay. I'm having a problem with that. And I don't understand why my property is being excluded from the purchase. Now, I've been told that according to the surveys that may happen, it might happen. So I would put to you, how many of you would accept a very definite maybe? Okay, and so I'm supposed to move forward with that. So I would purchase your home, maybe. And I'm saying that, you know what, the plan as it sits right now, most likely would benefit the entire area. I don't feel that I should suffer for that, because if you take 10 or 15 feet, you bring the road closer to the bedrooms of my house where my grandsons sleep. So we have had one accident there already. And in the snow, if I can guarantee you that it was mentioned the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen, because I drive up and down Linder, and where it's 2 lanes in each direction, I'm routinely passed at 50 miles an hour. So the plan, I understand the plan, and I'm only speaking for myself. My other neighbors are here. Some of them are going to speak. I can only speak for myself, but I say, I don't understand the logic there where all of those houses are being purchased because it's not a safe ingress and egress for them, but it's okay to put the road that much closer to my house. And not only that, but how does that affect me later on down the road? Well, you'll compensate me for the land that you take now. How about in 6 years? What does that do to I can tell you that it would probably put the value of the property in the dump. So I don't have a good reason or a good concept to this other than purchase my property.
Thanks, Mr. Flores. Did you have a particular concept that you preferred?
Well, you know,
And make it really brief, please, if you
Yeah.
can.
what's good for me is not necessarily good for everybody else. So
I just want your opinion.
Yeah.
Yep.
the concept that you have there, I'm in agreement with.
Concept 2,
The
concept
concept
one?
that's being proposed tonight.
2. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Flores. Thank you.
The autos,
Welcome.
Okay, my biggest concern is,
Name and address, please.
oh, sorry,
Thank you.
Linda Harlan Auto, 1610 West Chateau. They're definitely going to take our house. We already know that. But what I have a concern about is this crossing thing that they're talking about. I forget what they call it exactly, but there's one in front of the library in Meridian. And I got to tell you, it's already been hit twice that I know of. So it makes me wonder how safe that's going to be for our kids crossing the street to go to school. That just does not compute in my brain. There's already a crossing guard there, and she has trouble with people not wanting to stop or not giving way to the kids. And it scares me to death. I live right there on that corner and I see this every day. And he was right. The traffic It may be 35 miles an hour. Nobody's doing it. The only people that do it are like the people like me that live in that neighborhood. And it makes me mad when I've got somebody right on my tail that's pushing me. And I get it. There's no turn lane there to go around the corner to the right. People use the bike lane all the time. That's another thing that irritates the snot out of me, because what about the bikes, you know? So I guess that's basically what I'm concerned about, is that crossing and how it's gonna keep our kids safe.
Harlan, did you have something to?
Well, concept 2 is probably the best one of what we could come up with, what you have on the thing. Since our house does sit closer to the road, I don't know how much more space you need. There's basically 4 lanes there now. I know south of us, there's parking along the road, which right now, if you eliminated street parking, you'd have 4 lanes right there. But I don't know if that's gonna help you or not. What I don't like about the 5-lane thing with all the medians is you're gonna put trees in there. It's bad for school buses. Because we are set higher. We can't see underneath the trees as they get bigger and get fluffier. I don't know, it looks like everything's 11-foot wide lanes, even the medians. I thought the roads had to be 12-foot lanes. An actual school bus, yellow side to side, is 8 foot. These newer ones we have now with West Ada, I know the mirror on the left side's only out about 10 inches. The one on the right might be more. But you take, if they were both 10 inches, you take 20 off of that extra 3 foot, that leaves you 16. That leaves you 8 inches between the mirror and the lanes. So that's what I kind of worry about. And even the roundabouts are a no, because that's going to create more problems at that corner. When she talked about the crosswalk light, the new hybrid pedestrian thing, if that's like the librarian one, kids don't use it right. I've seen kids just go to the middle and then cars will stop because they've seen them cross the one side. They won't push the button. They'll just continue on.
Thanks, Harlan.
Okay.
Commissioner Goldthorpe, did you have a question?
Not a question, but a comment that might give you a little bit of comfort. One of the things that we're doing and we'll do much more of when we build these hybrid beacons for pedestrian crossings, just because of exactly what you've said.
Okay.
We can create what's called a school zone right there. Speed limit's 20 miles an hour.
They
Okay.
don't listen to that either.
There's some that
They
don't.
will.
Yeah.
They will. I've had a rather firm discussion with the mayor about what law enforcement should be doing in these particular situations. And he's given me some information I'm going to be taking to the county commission. But that one action in a number of other spots in the county has made a big difference in the
Okay.
speeding.
All right, thanks.
Thank you both.
Julian
What's the last name?
Castaneda?
Hi there. Yeah, Julian Castaneda. I live at 2331 North Linder Road in Meridian. So I live on the west side of Linder, corner right there, Chateau. And so it's Chateau and Linder. I live on the west side. So I actually, these concepts, I actually do not like any of them. I don't like the 5 lanes. My house on the west side actually sits further from the road than the people on the east side. And it's already pretty loud. It's pretty fast. Traffic is fast. When I moved in about 2 years ago, there was talk amongst the neighbors that, oh, they're only going to take 20, 30 feet from this. And I said, no, I don't think so. I guarantee you they're going to want to try to take everything. So now my house would be purchased in this concept 2. I didn't measure, but I know there's a lot of property from my front door to my backyard. So I'm actually concerned about, I honestly would want to keep that rest of it and, versus having somebody else purchase it. Because I know in the report towards the bottom, there is talk about maybe redeveloping that area, which would be my backyard. I actually would want to keep that part
if that makes any sense. But I don't mind tearing down the house, giving up that front part, and then me keeping the property towards the back, because it is maybe, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 feet. But I don't like any of these concepts. Right now at Chateau and Linder, there is 3 lanes. There's a turn lane, there's a north and south, and there is room, and there's a little bit of a bike lane. What has come up in this meeting has kind of concerned me about, there possibly other purchases that may happen if this concept goes through. And I can tell you, by living there, you're not going to put 5 lanes without buying everybody in that neighborhood. East side and west side is just too, it's too small. But you can put 3 lanes. There is a lot of choke points in between Cherry and Chateau, where people either turning to the west or turning to the east, you create a choke point because there is only 2 lanes. And there is some areas where there is a turn lane in front of Tully Park. There is a turn lane. I forget the name of the road. And then the traffic flows smooth. And then a little bit further north, there's another choke point because there's only 2 lanes where the canal is. Can I?
If you want to summarize it in just a couple sentences.
Yeah, so I prefer, I don't prefer any of these 3 concepts. I think maybe even just 3 lanes with a center turn lane for, throughout Cherry and Linder or Ustick would work fine, would work perfect, because traffic would flow and people already merge on their own.
Thanks, Mr. Castaneda.
coming south.
Thank you. The next 3, Stacy, please.
So that was all that was in the audience that had signed up for Linder. I'm going to go to Zoom.
Let me just check really quick. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to testify on this issue? Okay, perfect.
All right, our first up is Abigail Johnson.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I think we need to turn up the volume a little bit. Okay. Go ahead, Abigail.
Yeah, I'm Abigail Johnson. My home address is 2081 North Linder Road. I'm coming to support Concept 2 and would like to have my home purchased. My only concerns is timeline to purchase, because I just feel like a sitting duck just kind of waiting for budget. So I would encourage, since a lot of us have known that our homes are likely to be purchased, and mine is, that there be some expediency behind timeline, so we're not sitting here waiting to be purchased. Obviously, houses can't be built fast enough in this area, and I'd like to be able to take my time to choose and not be stuck in a corner waiting for budget.
Thanks, Abigail. The next 2, please, Miss Stacy.
Next is Stacy Jones.
Hi, my name is Stacy Jones. My husband and I own the Child Care Center located at 1930 North Linder Road.
Miss Jones, can you give us your address, please?
1930 North Linder Road in Meridian. It's on the corner of Linder and Story. You can see the concept. You can see our location in the section 3 of concept 2. Concept 2 shows that an entrance to our parking lot from North Linder Road will be blocked off. It also shows the tree line median that will block left-hand turns from North Linder onto West Story and from West Story onto North Linder. This will pose challenges for families dropping off and picking up their children from our center. Our understanding is that traffic coming from North Linder will have to turn left onto West Story and travel around the loop. I'm sorry, they'll turn left onto West Sandalwood and travel around the loop onto West Story. Housing in that area consists of apartments and duplexes, and the road is extremely congested with vehicles and utility trailers parked on both sides of the street. It makes it very difficult for 2-way traffic to flow through that area, and it creates a lot of blind spots that I personally would have concerns about my families with transporting young children would have to deal with. The road is also not maintained, So when we do have those heavy snowfalls in the winter, I'm gonna have families getting stuck in there, and not being able to get to work on time. That's gonna be a huge problem for us. EMS came up, and we're also concerned about that because if the road is unmaintained or congested and we have an emergency with a child, of course, we want EMS there as quickly as possible, and this definitely is gonna impede on that. We're also concerned about parking. We have 10 employees, all with vehicles to get to and from work. And we serve about 44 families who are in and out of our parking lot each day. We currently have enough parking for all of our employees, and we can have about 4 to 5 families pick up at one time. So we kind of have them staggered to be able to pick up and make it all work. It's our understanding that ECHD will have to modify our parking lot since it won't be accessible from Linder anymore. So the families will have to come in off of Story after going through that loop. And we don't know at this point if we'll even have enough parking to service our employees and families, which is a huge concern for us. We're also concerned curious if that cost is of the driveway, because they will have to put a new driveway in for us, if that cost has been added into the project. And then, so I guess in a nutshell, we would actually like to see the tree-lined street removed. I think visibility is an issue, but I also think, I understand the reason behind putting that there. But if we could at least have it removed from in front of Story, that would solve some of the issues that we're dealing with.
Thanks, Ms. Jones.
Pardon me?
Thanks, Ms. Jones. We're at time. And I think those concerns you brought up are really valid, and I would hope that we would address them in the design process. I'm seeing a head nod. Could we address some of those concerns? Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Stacy, for having that and sharing those with us. Thank you.
Next is Morgan Keating.
Hello.
Hi, welcome, Ms. Keaton.
Thank you. My name is Morgan Keating. I live at 1880 West McGlinchey Street. So I turn into Sandalwood to the west to reach my neighborhood. We're just a block or two off of Linder. But I'm really excited about this project. I think it's going to improve Linder and the driving and biking and walking experience greatly. I was initially asking for time to speak because I was curious about the roundabouts, but it looks like project or concept 2 doesn't include roundabouts. So scratch that question. So my second question was, will the on-demand crossing light just north of Tully Park remain so that kids can still use that to get across?
I'm seeing a head nod, so that would be yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Morgan.
All right, next, Cindy Simmons has her hand raised.
Hello,
Please name and address for the record.
this is Mike and Cindy Simmons from 1661 West Chateau Drive. My question is, so proposal 2, is that going to continue the same way that the road is from Ustick to Shinden as far as lane wise? And why can't we just keep it the same way that it is all the way down the corridor already?
With no trees,
With
basically.
no trees, nothing. It seems like you guys are taking more than what they took previously down the road. And my other question is so when Highway 16 is finished, do you think how much traffic will be eased off of 10 Mile and off of Linder? Because I don't know, how many thousands of people do you think that go to Emmett every day or come from Emmett to Meridian, and they either come through Linder to get onto the interstate or they go up 10 Mile to get on the interstate now that that's easier? So how much congestion is going to be released once that highway ever gets finished? So those are kind of my 2 questions is where I'm at.
Thank you. Great questions.
No answers?
No, we're getting a staff to respond to your questions. Thank you.
Madam President, Commission, I may need him to ask the second question, but as it pertains to the first one, it is the same footprint that you see north of Ustick. However, what you notice about this particular 1.5 mile segment is it's largely residential. There's a lot of access The tree-lined medians through the corridor are to provide two important attributes. It provides friction, so it is a traffic calming measure. In addition to that, it provides access management because we have so many local roads that feed onto Linder.
And my
And then the
second question
I may
was about
refer
Highway
to-
16. If Highway 16 gets finished, how
Mhm.
much traffic do you guys think are going to be relieved off of these two roads?
Perfect. We've got another staff member coming to answer that question.
Madam President, members of the commission, the reality is we don't really know. This corridor specifically is impacted by Highway 16. I doubt it will be impacted as much as 10 Mile Road, which is a freeway interchange. This is an overpass. The traffic along this corridor, whether it's going to really divert a lot from Highway 16, time will tell. Time will tell. So I know that's not the best answer, but that's the reality of this type of improvement.
Mr. Goldthorpe?
I've asked this question a lot of times of a lot of the experts. Haven't asked Justin, but the consensus that I get, and I live closer to Highway 16, is that it's going to impact Meridian Road and 10 Mile, not Linder.
Correct.
I mean, yeah, because if you go down Chateau and try to get out on 10 Mile at any kind of traffic, you can't get out. People don't let you out. You can't get out. There's no way to get on that road. So that road should relieve pressure with Highway 16. And I guess that's my final questions. And as far as it goes, number 1 is a waste of money, and number 3 is a waste of money.
And number 2, sorry, my opinion is you guys are wasting a lot of space. It should just have the 5 traffic lanes and sidewalks and maybe a bike lane, but you don't need all that additional property from the owners, and you shouldn't have to buy all those people out. You guys are wasting a lot of space. And
Thank you,
City
Mr.
of
and
Meridian,
Mrs.
sorry,
think we're-
City of Meridian does not maintain their properties already. And, you know, I'm right next door to it. So is it going to be my job to go weed their area when they don't already take care of the city? And I've lived in this location, in this house for 28 years. So I know what the growth has been.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Simmons.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hold on a second. You okay? Okay. You okay?
Sarah, you're up next.
Hello, I'm Sarah Mann. We are at 2208 North Linder. So we're on that east side of Linder. My family and I are in favor of concept 2. And we want to express also concern with purchasing our home sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you. So Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Oh, just a little tidbit along those lines. Generally, ACHD is very happy to have willing sellers because we're able to make those right-of-way decisions and purchases much earlier than we might otherwise. So I don't think you really have anything to worry about in that regard because we can do things like that a long time before there's any ground broken on a road.
Okay. And I see an Ingram G. You're up next, please.
Yes, Glenn Ingram. Good evening.
Thank you.
My
Good
wife
evening.
and I, Kimberly, live at 1520 North Linder Road. We've been here approximately 6 years. I want to, Madam President and Commissioners, I want to say that I really appreciate the vision that this area is implementing, because I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. I don't want Meridian and the Boise Valley to become a Tucson. I want it to be, I say it, a Phoenix, because what did they do? They planned properly. So this is a really good thing. And you guys have gone through, and I'm an aerospace engineer, so I'm used to planning and such. So I understand the painstaking gyrations you have to go through. So a couple points real quick. One, though I understand people's understanding about the money spent for trees and all this stuff, that's the nature of our county here, and keeping Meridian with trees will maintain that. And right now, they'll be pretty skinny trees, but in the future, they'll be like downtown Boise in the north end where I used to live. So I applaud that. I want to comment on this process. So though we got missed in the first time, we didn't know about this. We invested over $225,000 in a total remodel of our house. But the team has been incredible, and we would have never done that if I knew that this was happening. But we've been able to live in it for a few years, so it's great. But extremely professional people. They've gone through all the questions, all the answers, et cetera. So thank you for that. My second comment is, really safety. Unfortunately, right now, we've had an influx of a lot of people coming here, and it's hard for us between 8 and 9:30 and 3 and almost 5:30 to even get in and out of our house here, because we don't have the people that used to let you in anymore. I'm not trying to be negative, but people are not that nice anymore, and they make us sit. My wife sometimes has to go through 3 lights at here at Cherry and Linder. So it's a safety concern, right? Because I see a lot of the kids walking from high school back and forth. So that's good. And then lastly, I want to make the comment that we are in favor of number 2. That was the one that I knew because of my technical background. That's going to move the most cars, so that's great. But most importantly, we want to move on as well, because I'm 2 years from retirement, and I really want to get my life together before I have to destroy our house, which will kill me because I helped build this. But I appreciate all the hard work, the discussions, and really the planning that's gone on.
Thanks, Mr. Ingram.
Have a good day.
And the Gress family.
Hello, Sherry Gress and Dwayne Gress at 2120 North Linder Road on the east side. There were 3 points I really wanted to touch on. One of them is that in concept 2, the median blocks access from the east side from Tana and Kingswood. And without the roundabouts in there, you're effectively telling everyone they can only go one way out of the neighborhoods on each side. You can only cross at Sandalwood. You can only cross at Chateau. Given that this is a primary corridor for emergency services, fire, every delivery service, the school buses, the trash route with Republic Services at the end there with the school bus depot, that does become an issue. Even with 2 lanes, there will be choke points on a 5-lane system with a median that blocks the residences coming out. And I don't see that addressed anywhere. The second point is who maintains the multipaths. Right now, it's on residents to keep the sidewalks shoveled and clear. And I don't see anything in here for who's going to do that when there are no longer any facing residences. And if you're expecting those to be the safe route to schools and to parks for children and anyone else using them, somebody has to maintain it. And the third point is with Barbara Morgan's STEM, BMSA in there between Chateau and Sandalwood. The school is encouraging, and has been for several years, the use of Sandalwood as an access to the back route into the school because of the congestion at Chateau. There's not a crosswalk there. The school zone only goes halfway down to it. People are crossing in traffic on a daily basis at Sandalwood, and it's dangerous. And we've asked the school, and they say it's on ACHD. We've called ACHD. They say it's on the schools. But that needs to be addressed if this is going to be a 5-lane road with children in the street at both ends of that block, and no way to see them past the trees, and no way to get in and out of the residences except at those 2 choke points at Sandalwood and Chateau.
Thanks, Sherry. I think that last bit we can look into for sure. And I wanted to answer your second question. So being that this multi-use pathway would be within the right of way, it would be ACHD's jurisdiction to manage and maintain that pathway. So we have equipment that can manage and maintain it, and it would be our responsibility to take care of that, not on the property owners adjacent to that property. So thank you, Ms. Gress. Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yeah, I've been as frustrated as you have on a few occasions with, you said someone says it's the school's responsibility, and then they say it's ACHD's responsibility. In my district, I've taken that bull by the horns a couple of times. And when I call up Mr. Reinhold, who's in charge of those decisions for the district, he smiles and says, how can we get this done? But that's just my personality showing through. That can happen here with very little little effort, I am positive. Now, I won't be on the commission when that phone call or visit gets made, but I'd volunteer to come back with a smile on my face and do that. That won't be hard to address.
Okay, sure.
We do have one more, Paulette.
Okay, Paulette.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, Paulette.
I am Paulette Capolini and I live at 1631 West Sandalwood. So I'm on the corner of Linder and Sandalwood. And I'm not really sure which concept I agree with in regards to my home, because in concept 2, at this point, which Brooke has explained that until you get to the design phase, it may or may not be purchased. I've lived here 25 years and just recently I'm widowed, and recently I have made a lot of improvements on the home to the tune of more than $150,000. And it concerns me because on concept 2, if it's 50 feet off the center line, that goes right, that's very close to my home. And I agree with Mr. Flores. We're probably in the same position, although he's on Chateau and I'm on Sandalwood, that it's too close for comfort. So, and as I agree with one of the other neighbors that says, you need to either buy them all, but the picking and choosing it doesn't make sense because it comes so close to the, to your home that it's gonna, forget about the value, your home value, that'll just be dropped if it isn't dropping as of today. So I'm really concerned about that. I particularly do not want to move, because where do you move in Meridian? What, you're not, we don't have an HOA here for one. Number two, where do you go? Where, only to the communities where the homes are probably $700-800 for the same size home and don't have like the yard. I particularly have a dog, a fenced in yard. It's just not, I realize that we're talking about the betterment of the community, but I also have questioned Brooke about the survey of 500 people. Well, I didn't see the representation of the people that are directly impact in that survey. There was not even a little teeny slice of the pie. So, the people that are just driving past every day, okay, they might have to slow down at the busy points, at the busy times of the day, as we all do. I don't care if you make 12 lanes on the freeway. At rush hour in the morning and in the afternoon, it's congestion. So, you guys are the experts as far as the planning and, the surveys and stuff, but, when it directly impacts you, we're looking at it from more of a personal standpoint. And yeah, I mean, it's true. Living on the corner of Sandalwood at 4:00, the kids that go to Barbara Morgan, those parents are down there picking up. It's, on Sandalwood. And sometimes I can't get out of my driveway. So I understand that something needs to be done to alleviate. I don't think it's going to alleviate that. They're always going to be waiting there. And not,
Thank you, Ms. Capolini. We're at time.
Well, I wanted to say one more thing, that my property is going to be impacted not only on the Linder side, but on the Sandalwood side. So they're like squeezing you out, but they don't want, if they want that, then buy my home. I mean, I don't want to move, but I also don't want to live on top of two busy streets then.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Capolini. Is there anyone else on Zoom that would like to testify on this item? All right. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. I do have a follow-up question for staff based off of Mr. Flores and Ms. Capolini's points. Brooke, do you mind explaining a little bit of your thought process about about why those additional homes would be considered.
Madam President, Commissioners, I'm looking for the clicker. If we can get the PowerPoint brought up. Oh, I'm sorry, it is in front of me. Can we get the PowerPoint brought up? Actually, we're in the right spot. So let's take us over to that space in particular. So I want to draw your attention. You see the signalized intersection there at the right southern portion of the screen. That's Mr. Flores's house. And then I want to draw your attention to the top portion. This is where you've got Sandalwood. Paulette's house is there, essentially on the southwest corner. We adhere to the City of Meridian setback requirements. When we look to those who are fronting Linder and why we know for sure that we're going to be purchasing them, it's because the setback from the property line is 20 feet. We are encroaching beyond that 20 feet. So we know we're certain that we're going to have to purchase those. In the case of Paulette and Mr. Flores, those two homes, we're looking at the side setback, which is 10 feet from the property line. And we cannot ascertain right now whether or not, without having the additional design work, will we purchase those homes? That question is going to have to be answered when we get out there with our professionals to do the necessary survey work to determine, are we within that 10 feet? What does that damage look like? Is it a purchase or is it a partial compensation? But it's too early in this process to make that determination. The other homes, we are certain we are encroaching upon that 20 feet.
Brooke, do you mind, so that's helpful. I really appreciate that. How many homes are in that type of predicament?
I'm sorry.
How many homes are in that type of predicament along this corridor?
Looking right now, I would say those are probably the two. The other one I would say could potentially be the duplex situation that we have right there on Chateau. It's on that southwest corner. There's a potential we may be encroaching upon their setback as well. If we go further along the corridor and let's just examine that. Many of those other locations, you see it right there and I can't even see that far. If we do not believe that with those two locations that's necessary. We don't think we're within that 10-foot setback. So, but we're certain when it comes to those two intersections at Chateau and Sandalwood, those are the homes that we are questionable about. And that's why we didn't reflect a full purchase at this point. It's too early to tell.
So, Brooke, do you mind, I mean, obviously you talked about the estimated cost with what information we have for the purchases of all those homes. Do you have like an estimate of what the average cost would be per home so that we can apply that to a potential add-on to this cost of this project?
Madam President, when we looked at the right-of-way compensation necessary with this, we looked at each individual project. I mean, each individual house, so it differs. I can't necessarily say, I'll look to you if we have an average. Probably. Yeah, so I can't necessarily say there's an average. And I would hate to make that quote, approximately like 500,000 is probably what we allocated. But to talk about the process and what that compensation looks like, we look at the market value or the assessed value. And at that time, when we have to make that purchase, we pay the higher of the two. But you look to some of these homes, their values are certainly more significant than their neighbors. And several of these homes are duplexes. So it's hard to ascertain what that average may look like or what we would apply. Each house we have to look at individually and we purchase them individually, not necessarily what their neighbors are.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, that's a good question. So several people have pointed out as soon as if we were to adopt this concept, that affects the market. So the market value of these homes is going to be depressed because of the anticipated impact of having a mobility corridor right next to their house. Do we calculate it based upon pre-adoption if we were to adopt this concept or after adoption? Because that is, and the same thing with the assessed value, because the assessed value is going to, houses that will sell along that under similar circumstances will sell for less because, they don't sell right next to these busy arterials.
Madam President, members of the commission, So as was stated, when we go forward with the purchase of right-of-way, that process follows all of our policies and rules. We perform at that time an assessment of the property that's taken by an independent appraiser, and we go through an individual process on each property. At this phase, within our development of this project, staff really can't say more than that. That's the process we will follow. Each of those items is then individually negotiated with each property owner, and they have every opportunity to provide data, counteroffers, and anything that they feel is relevant in that negotiation process. And so, other than that, that's really all we can say at this point at the staff level.
I just want to follow up because Meridian and ACHD, or Meridian wants this to be a mobility corridor. It extends all the way north of the river, south, eventually south of the freeway. It's somewhat comparable to the way in which we're building out Lake Hazel as a mobility corridor going east and west. The difference, of course, being that nobody's building houses this close to Lake Hazel. They're quite a ways back, and they aren't fronting on Lake Hazel. There's fences and berms and so forth to reduce the sound. So it seems to me that because transforming this road significantly will impact all the houses that either back onto, side onto, or front onto Linder, they would have a justifiable claim to say, you need to purchase out this property.
Madam President, once again, all of those negotiations would occur at the time of property purchase.
Okay. So I think before I know I've got a couple questions, but so we're really looking at, for concept 2, it's at least 40 million with a scale that we cannot predict right now. So, okay, Commissioner McKinney, you were next.
Yes, thank you. And Justin, stick around. My questions probably involve you, and I think some questions and comments. There were a number of commenters who asked about the time frame. So it'd be worth giving some general guidelines about what is likely to be the time frame for this project. Likewise, I think just from my standpoint, one thing that every member of the public needs to understand is that when you have connection to or relationship with a project that's happening in your area, you can always talk to ACHD staff to keep up to date on what's happening with questions and to get information. So on an ongoing basis, by all means, talk with ACHD staff to get more information. I think, Justin, this is where you could, in addition to the timeframe question, you've discussed the right-of-way acquisition process and what's involved, and some of the property owners who've expressed concern about their property isn't shown to be taken and they're concerned about that. Take a moment and mention, if you will, in the process of acquiring right-of-way, if there, in every case, it's not just the value of the property, but there are other aspects of value impacts that are taken into consideration when property is acquired.
Madam President, members of the commission, I think there were 2 questions there. I'll take the second one first. You're right, Commissioner McKinney. There are various different items that are considered in a right-of-way purchase. I can't even enumerate all of them. What I can say, it is ACHD's practice to certainly pay the fair market value. We don't take people's property without compensation. We follow a process that allows that property owner to highlight any concerns they may have, and we then negotiate with that property owner. One specific aspect of right-of-way negotiation often references things like proximity damage. So there is an element of how close we get, and that is considered by the independent appraisers, and we look at that, and there are formulas to calculate those kinds of things. There's probably other things, and maybe Mr. Price wants to come up and provide more, but landscaping and improvements and all of those things are taken into account when we get those appraisals, make those initial offers, and then work through the acquisition process. For those properties where we end up needing to purchase the entire property, there's also relocation benefits associated with assisting the person to find a new place to live.
And Justin, is it also true that there are cases where, for example, a project does not require the entire purchase of a piece of property, only a portion of it, but in negotiations and discussions with the property owner, at times the decision is made, the district buys out the entire property and then simply resells the remaining parcel. Is that also a fairly standard procedure that happens in many cases?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, it's certainly a possibility in the negotiations.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yeah, something that occurred to me after I listened to a couple of pieces of testimony from folks that have a concern about the value of their home 6 months from now as opposed to today. If it were me, I'd have my home appraised tomorrow. Just so you'd have some data to use with the right-of-way people, because the more data that the folks give them, the happier they are.
Madam President, for the record, Steve Price, General Counsel. This isn't the first road project that we've done, and it's been in the planning for many years. And there's always the argument that, well, just by having it on a map, it somehow deflates the value of the property. Well, the condemnation law is pretty good about how we go about getting the fair market value of the land. And Justin's done a really good job explaining the process. But I will tell you is that when the appraiser, our appraiser, we don't look at the value of the homes along Linder Road. We look at those within the area, and the property owner has the ability to provide other comparables to get that value. We also look at the history of the assessed value. That's a pretty good kind of indicator. But this is all that goes on in the negotiations with the property owner. We explain the different severance damages, proximity damages, and the appraisal identifies all of those aspects, we hope. But it's usually the property owner gets their nose underneath the hood, and we, in my 22 years, we've never had one go to court. So I think that speaks volumes as to the love, the staff and the professionalism and our knowledge of the law and our willingness to work with property owners. We're the ones impacting their lives. Remember that. We're the ones impacting their lives, and we want to leave. We understand that when we negotiate with them, we're sympathetic to that, and we try and make it right.
If there's no other, I have a
Time
question.
frame question, though.
Okay.
I don't think Justin got around to that.
Yeah,
Okay.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney. So on a time frame, as I said, the right-of-way acquisition dollars are not currently within the adopted or the proposed integrated 5-year work plan. I do believe the design is listed in 2028 as a within this integrated 5-year work plan. What I'll do, though, is play out a potential scenario in a situation like this. We would like to get the design going to answer some of the questions that have come up today. And until we get that design completed, it's hard to answer all the questions. During the design process, there's further public outreach and much more detail when it comes to specific property impacts. After that, if the commission so chooses to pursue the project, a right-of-way acquisition process of this scope and scale would likely take multiple years for the highway district. So it would not be something where we're going out and finishing this in 6 months. It would be a multi-year process due to the complexity and the cost. And so what I can say is if we just kind of play this out, if we're not beginning the design until 2028, finalizing that until 2029, it's likely not until the 2030s that we're even starting to acquire right-of-way based on the current timeline that is in your integrated 5-year work plan that you're looking at tonight.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam President,
Commissioner Gold.
this is just a follow-on to some of the comments that we heard from folks about kind of like the function of this area being that, you know, them feeling that it's okay as it is. So I'm wondering if we looked at a concept at all that, or considered, you know, a concept that is essentially keeping it the way it is, but with like, you know, improved efficiency.
Madam President and members of the commission, you know, this is a pretty unique arterial design as it currently sits in its existing condition. I actually live about a half mile from here and drive this all the time, very familiar with the corridor. To maintain its existing design would be very challenging, especially if with the commission's goals related to bicycle and pedestrian connectivity and the city of Meridian's goals in that area also. To get to, I think, some level of complete street that is really serving all users, I think that was the 3-lane concept that was brought forward today. And so below that, it's really hard to meet the commission's LTS guidelines when it comes to properly accommodating bicyclists and pedestrians.
Any follow? No. Okay. Commissioner Hanson?
One last question. That's about funding. Really, it sounds like it's really, you know, about funding and cost. Would this be eligible for federal funding? I know the new travel lanes could be eligible for impact fees, but not the existing or rebuilding the existing travel lanes or anything else. So we have impact fees, we have property taxes. The source of the property taxes is from property taxpayers throughout the entire county and developers throughout the entire county. Is this contemplated, or could this be subject to federal? Because we do go seek federal grants, in which case there would be, you know, a smaller local match. Is this possible? I know we didn't do this for the Eagle Road, the 21 million or $19 million one. It's moving forward. There's no federal money for that, but this one, could it be?
Madam President, members of the commission, certainly it could be. That's a decision that is made when we get closer to the design and the right-of-way acquisition and construction phases. At this time, we haven't set it up as a federal project, but we have pivoted in the past, and I don't want to close the door on any potential funding source because the requirements and regulations and opportunities for that are constantly changing, and I would never want to close the door on any funding source.
And I mean, I thought a similar question, but I think the better question is how likely, and to your point, things change all the time, but how likely, especially considering all of the other grant opportunities that we are pursuing, and how does that really fit, or is that at odds with what we're already pursuing?
Madam President, members of the commission, you know, I'll try to speak to the likelihood question. I think it's fair. I'll say it this way. Under the current federal standards and guidelines associated with federal funding and competitive grants, and the commission's direction related to federal funding and our focus, this is an unlikely candidate for federal funding.
Okay, thanks, Justin. And so I have just to kind of round up, Brooke, you mentioned this in the first work session, but could you summarize again for us the level of service for cars as it stands today, and then how that would improve with each of these concepts, and then translate that to, is that a 30-second improvement in the peak hour? If you could summarize that for us, I think that'd be great.
Madam President, Commissioners, I did bring forward 2 slides. I'll speak to the first one, and then I'll likely refer my time to our consultant who can go a little bit more in depth. But something you have to note, it is 1.5 mile segment that we're looking at. The level of service varies from C to F through the whole corridor. Something important to note, where we see an F, it's because we're approaching the intersections. And there's a second slide in which we can kind of talk a little bit more about that. The 3 lanes, the 5 lanes projected does meet ACHD's level of service planning threshold within the next 20-year analysis. Something else to understand, level of service is one variable that we look at when we make these decisions. It's not the only one. So we have to take into account the level of traffic stress. Through these 3 alternatives before you, do they elevate pedestrian safety? We also have to take into account the public's weighing in on this, as well as our stakeholders and their preference. So this is just one of multiple variables in which we take into consideration. Planning beyond the 20-year horizon is supportive of a 5-lane roadway. ACH's master street map and the City Meridian's vision, it also supports. The selection of the preferred concept, both the cities as well as the stakeholders and property owners, is a clear vision for the future and the form and the function of this roadway, that being of 5 lanes. In particular, the continued conversation about level of service. The second template that I want to bring your attention to, this gives you a breakdown. It is 1.5 miles. So what you're seeing when we say level of service, that's the average. But what you're looking at here is the subsegments. Where you're seeing the F, it's because that's the approach to the intersection. Again, it's varied throughout the whole corridor. It's hard to say, you know, the level of service as it pertains to a certain location is identified there for 3 and 5 lanes. But what does that look like for the whole corridor itself? But really want to go back and reiterate, our level of service is just one variable. Seldom do we make the decision about how we're going to improve a roadway just based off of the level of service. We have to take into account all the other variables. If there's further questions, certainly I'd invite Pearson to come up here. When we're looking at speeds and how does that improve your speed through the corridor, I will state it's very minimal. But again, it is just one of our variables that we're having to examine and consider. So if there's further questions, certainly, Madam President, I'll yield to those. I'll also yield to Pearson should we want more detail.
Yeah, I'd like to have like quantify these grades to efficiency in like seconds, right? Is that going to be 30-second savings in a 5-lane configuration versus a 3, that type of thing?
Let me pull that up for you. So in the packet that's before you or has been presented up for adoption, get it for you. It's minuscule amounts. There it is. It is approximately, for the existing, it's 4 minutes, 4 seconds. For our scenario that we're proposing, it's 3.8 seconds. So
With the
about a half.
forecasted growth is what you're saying, Brooke, with the forecasted growth, that's what we're saying.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for that.
It's a lot of growth.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions for staff? Okay, all right, commissioners.
If I may, Madam President, let me just make one comment, and that is that I have to admit, I'd like to meet the person or persons who made the decision to put all those front-on driveways on Linder Road back 40 odd years ago when that decision was made. Very, very poor planning on the part of, I don't know if it was the city or the county or who it was, or maybe it was ACHD, I don't know, but it was a bad decision. We're reaping the negative consequences of some bad decisions in the past. But in any event, first of all, aside from the level of service numbers that we just saw, and I'm a former highway engineer, I completely understand those. They can also be misleading sometimes. One of the things that I will say is this: I can't possibly, under any circumstance, be in favor of leaving this as a 3-lane section. It simply can't work for the future. If we're not gonna widen this road to 5 lanes in this area, we shouldn't spend a dime on it. We can take that 40 million and use it someplace else. That being said, I would make a motion that we approve concept 2 for this. I guess we need to specify the project here. The Linder Pine Road Avenue to Ustick concept. I move that we adopt concept 2.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded, discussion. Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with this. I think it's really important that Meridian's vision for what its city wants. Meridian has to spend the money in order to accomplish this. Meridian taxpayers. This is an area that developed, the choice is made to develop this almost exclusively auto dependent. So there's little other options. Now Boise is taking a different approach, and you do look at arterials like Maple Grove between the river and the interstate. Maple Grove, 5 Mile, Orchard, Curtis, they all go from 5 to 3 at various points, and they're permanently constrained at certain points, and there's front-on housing. So they do work as arterials, but Boise then provides other services in order to make sure there's mobility. And so, you know, there is that option, but that's not the choice Meridian wants. I think we have to respect this is what Meridian wants. I think there will be additional costs. I think it's just as everybody who's testified, it just seems unreasonable that you would be living next to a mobility corridor as wide and as taking as much traffic as I anticipated on this, much like Lake Hazel with houses so close. So it's a mobility corridor going all the way, as we've heard, between 3 cities. And we'll probably need to also spend some tax dollars to build sound walls to protect those properties nearby. So it will cost. So there'll be a significant cost. The question is where it comes from. And that's why it's really, I'm glad this is before the integrated 5-year work plan, because there's a lot of neighbors throughout the county who are asking us, can you move something up that costs a fraction of this? Because we're taxpayers too. We've built homes and businesses, and we've paid impact fees. And so I think that's why it's really critical that the resources for Meridian's decision has to come from Meridian taxpayers and developers, just as the resources for what's happening in Boise comes from Boise taxpayers and developers. And that's why it's really important. There's different visions of how we approach this. I think it's fine. We adopt this concept 2, and I'm going to vote for it because Meridian's asking for it. But the huge question hanging over future commissions and the city of Meridian is, where's the money going to come from? And since this is way out in the future, as are sadly a lot of projects I've been advocating for the last 12 years, they're still out in the future. And these are neighborhoods that have been existing and paying property taxes for years and years and years, and they're still waiting for some improvements. The other, of course, is the data on level of service shows this is what Meridian wants to see each of its arterials built out to 5 lanes. There will be congestion. There'll still be congestion, as the data showed. You'll still have level of service F at those key intersections in 2050, probably more. When you widen arterials, it tends to induce demand. Commissioner Goldthorpe pointed out, yeah, it'll pull people over from both Meridian Road and 10 Mile. It'll induce demand. The development patterns that we're seeing out there continue to be auto dependent. So the demand will be induced. There'll still be congestion. So don't assume that the $40 million plus is going to reduce congestion. There'll be congestion. It'll just be congestion on a 5-lane arterial. But this is what the city of Meridian wants. And so it is always troubling to adopt a concept knowing the enormous cost that Meridian has to help us grapple with figuring out where that money comes from. It's unlikely to come from federal grants. This is not the kind of thing the feds are looking to see for a match. They're much more excited about investing in resources for transit, but that's not that's not what we do. And so that's the way forward. And that's why, I'll move forward with this, but in 5-10 years, there's going to be a lot of struggle to figure out where the money to do this, because there's also a lot of other priorities I know on Ustick and McMillan that Meridian wants to see addressed. And it's just not fair for property taxpayers, in the Central Bench of Boise or Barber Valley to continue to try and fund those when there's been deferred projects in their own neighborhoods.
Madam President.
Commissioner Gold.
Well, I can certainly appreciate, the city's desire for consistency and to have that standard approach across their city. I'm personally not in support of the motion. I really struggle with the idea and the way that the system is set up right now. To Commissioner Hansen's point, is that that it is taxpayer dollars that will go toward the acquisition of 35 and likely more properties in order to accommodate a perception of significant benefit when the data is showing that it's 30 seconds difference. And it'll be a significant impact on the neighborhood. So I won't be voting for the motion.
Commissioner Goldthorpe, did you have anything? Okay. I just want to say thank you to everyone that came tonight. And obviously there's another item too that I want to be mindful of and don't want to belabor the point, but I'm really sympathetic to all the concerns brought up today. And looking at you, Julian, in particular, like I look at these 3 options and I'm not really thrilled with any of them myself either. Especially given just some of the things that we've seen over the course of the last few years when we have a 5-lane arterial. I am encouraged by the landscape median and some of the other aspects that we know will make a difference when it comes to safety. But yeah, I mean, I just did some very rough calculations on my phone that even with not even accounting for inflation, this is going to be already as it stands with this at least 40 million, this would be 34% of our capital budget alone, which is just astronomical for the whole county, right? So Commissioner Hansen's point is very well made. I really don't know how this would be built. I mean, with the lack of funding, the challenges that we have, even doing the things that we need to do. And so I very much I will vote in support of this motion because only it's something that the city of Meridian is saying that they want. But I have some deep reservations about it and the likelihood that it would get built because of how expensive this is going to be. And the city is going to have to provide leadership to us about what would be deprioritized to make room for this. And I think we should have a joint meeting about that conversation. And I think too, we're working really hard with them to fund and build the Linder Road overpass. And I think the complexity of this corridor also begs us to ask, does the overpass come first? Do we widen this 1.5 mile corridor first? Like chicken or the egg? I mean, we're moving toward it's the Linder Road overpass is coming first, but is that going to exacerbate the problem or make it non-existent? Who knows, right? I think that we're going to need to first further study just the nature of the sequencing of these proposed investments. How does that impact the scheduling of this project? And how does that impact other projects within the city of Meridian's footprint? And arguably the county, because this is also going to serve a more regional corridor as well. And so we're going to need to have conversations with the county and Eagle and Star, because this will have impacts to them as well, which cannot be overstated from a budget standpoint, because they are also grappling with a ton of congestion, so much lack of infrastructure. And so, yeah, so this is not an easy decision to make. And I fully hope that we'll have some clarity from the city of Meridian about how they propose to actually build this. But I just want to, again, close with saying thank you all for coming tonight. This is not fun. This is not easy. It's intimidating. Thank you for helping inform us, though, about the stakes of this decision. And especially in the light of the fact that we have a housing crisis in this valley, this is deeply troubling. And I think that I think those types of considerations need to also be elevated to the city as well, because they seem to think that that's not as big of an issue as it is moving cars through your neighborhood. So with that, all those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed?
No.
Motion carries. All right, so we'll take a 10-minute break and then we're going to reconvene on item number 2, which is the integrated 5-year work plan. It is a big item. All right, we're reconvening to talk about our second item and our last item on the regular agenda. And that is the 2025-2029 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan. This is an adoption hearing. So I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing and welcome Miss Rebecca Phillips. Yes.
So good evening, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, Rebecca Phillips here, Transportation Planner with ACHD Planning Division. I'm here today to present to you the adoption of the 2025-29 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan. So we all know this slide, but mainly it's just so important to capture the fact that the development of this plan is an extensive year-long process in which we have now reached the ending phase. Here's a snapshot of our public and partner engagement along the way. We received a total of 783 comments from the public with the initial outreach and 585 project requests from our partners. For the final outreach of the draft plan, we received 4 responses from our partner agencies and 360 total public comments. And just to highlight, Commissioners, we have been before you a total of 7 times this past year with an additional individual meetings upon request. Now to jump into the plan highlights that we are so excited to share. This year, we had a notable jump in public participation. The plan includes 342 projects equaling $1.2 billion, composing of a wide array of different project types and programs. We do have a lot to look forward to here in 2025 as far as construction. Aiken Street, Bannock Street, Eagle and Lake Hazel, State Street and Pierce Park, and Ustick and Black Cat, just to name a few. Combine those with nearly 17 rapid implementation projects that will also be constructed. And furthermore, this plan has capitalized on various funding opportunities, including a federal award for the Access to Opportunity projects. Specific funding for Highway 16 is allocated to several large projects related to the new state highway. Additionally, impact fees are being utilized for major projects along Eagle Road. And I just want to highlight, Commission, again, that the vehicle registration fees are scheduled to sunset in 2028. And we receive $14 million annually, half of which directly go to safe routes and congestion management. And all of those highlights and more are included on the new Integrated 5-Year Work Plan cut sheet that Stacy passed out to you guys earlier. This is something new that we've implemented this year, much thanks to our amazing communication department. And we feel this does a great job summarizing the key themes and projects included in the plan. And with all of that, Madam President and Commissioners, staff's recommendation is for your approval of Resolution 2428, adoption of the 25-29 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan and interactive map as presented.
Thanks, Rebecca. I just want to give you and Christy a lot of kudos for making some really big and quick adjustments with public comment and being responsive to the feedback we received about the structure of how we present the map and all of that good stuff. And I noticed that you updated some of the terminology with the outcome of some of the surveys. So thank you for doing that. Like my husband even like took the survey, was like, wait, what are we talking about here? So I just want to say thank you. And I really appreciate once again, like your responsiveness. And I think we've got a great thing to consider tonight. So Commissioners, any questions for staff before we turn over to public testimony? Commissioner McKinney.
Yes, Madam President, I have one question, Rebecca, and I don't know if you can answer this or if maybe someone else on the staff. I'm asking this question to clear up what I think might be a misconception that some people have. One of the major funding items was that Highway 16 related funding, the $36.5 million that we received from the state. I had a member of the state legislature corner me recently and complained that ACHD had taken that money and spent it on other things. And I assured him that was absolutely not true. Can you clarify that funding that we got from the state? How has it been handled? And where is it going? And because I assured him that that money was sequestered and that was being used for these Highway 16 projects. And I would like it to be on the record, the details of that.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, for the record, Ryan Head, Director of ACHD. The money is in the bank, waiting for our expenses to go for those specific projects identified there. So we've spent some on design, and it will be available to be spent on the construction of the projects we committed it to be spent on.
So in the budget that we approved last month, there were some budget items then that used some of this funding for design of these Highway 16 projects, and the remainder is set aside, specifically sequestered for continued expenses on those projects. Is that correct?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that is correct.
Great. Thank you very much. I just wanted that to be very clear because, if anyone criticizes the district for misusing money that we've gotten from the state, they're absolutely out of line. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, Miss Stacy. Sarah, is everyone on mute there?
We have
No.
a few people. We have a few people signed up and we'll be asking them to come up. We have
Sorry to interrupt you, but there's a few folks that are not muted. Can you mute everyone really quick?
Oh,
before we-
yes.
At least there's one person. There we go. Thank you.
And anybody on Zoom, please stay muted until you're called upon. And if you would like to testify, please private chat with me and we'll make sure you get your turn. In the audience, we have Richard Hagelberg
And on deck.
and Steve Grockhouse.
Perfect. You guys saw the run of show?
Yes.
Please, yep. Thank you.
Madam
thank you.
President, members of the commission, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Richard Hagelberg. I live at 3016 South Honeycomb Way, which is on the north side of Warm Springs. My daughter and her family with 3 children live on the south side of Warm Springs. I cross Warm Springs via the Warm Springs Millbrook intersection at least twice daily in various directions. And I've been concerned about the safety of this intersection. And frankly, I'm not surprised by the recent tragic death that occurred a few weeks ago. Vehicles traveling Warm Springs routinely exceed the posted speed limit. The visibility to the northeast in the direction of the Warm Springs Eckert intersection is limited. Over the past 3 years, traffic at the Warm Springs Millbrook intersection has significantly increased. The presence of the new Dallas Harris Elementary School has more acutely heightened the concern for this intersection. There is a school zone speed limit, but that's frequently ignored. It's my understanding that the woman who was at the crossing guard last year did not renew her contract because of speed and safety concerns. I strongly request and encourage the ACHD to install a traffic roundabout as soon as possible and definitely before the 2025 school year begins. It's my understanding that that roundabout is in the 5-year plan. Until the roundabout is completed, it seems that the safest thing to immediately do is to make the intersection a 4-way stop. I realize that you'd like to keep Warm Springs as a fairly high-speed connector, but with all the traffic and with especially the presence of the school, I'm concerned about the wisdom of that decision. I agree that we don't want to shunt all the traffic down Park Center, which excessively slowing down the traffic on Warm Springs would cause, but I urgently request that ACHD take immediate steps to improve the safety of the Warm Springs Millbrook intersection, especially for the children. Finally, as a retired trauma surgeon, I'd like to highlight the data that compared to intersection management strategies, roundabouts are associated with fewer fatalities and fewer severe human trauma. There are a lot of fender benders, but less severe human trauma. Thank you very much for the opportunity for my comments.
Thank you, sir. You're on up.
Yes.
Don't mind me, I'm going to be nervous, okay?
You're great. You're
Okay.
doing great already.
Madam President,
Yes, sir.
Commissioners, I'm Steve Grothaus. I live at 3711 St. Andrew Street in Boise. I would just like to say that I don't believe there should be a dime spent of capital investment money to open up the road between Elder and St. Andrew Street. I live right at the end of the street. I've gone out and measured it. Right now, the street is, there should be a picture. Did you guys get the picture? Okay, yeah.
Yep.
You can see the picture. I got a box truck and my 2 cars sitting at the end of the street. That street's 30 feet wide, asphalt or curb to curb. Plus the curb. It's my understanding you have to have 35 to 38 feet wide for commercial type traffic. Is that correct? Anyways, there's no way you can put that through there unless you take an easement for my yard and the neighbor's yard. And all it's going to do is just facilitate a project that Boise City's got going to put in 2 motels right next to my house. I've lived there for 30 years or better. And from the people we get coming from the hotel side, we found hypodermic needles in our street. We've had right there at the berm behind my truck there was actually, I called the police on it because there was a encampment set up. And in that encampment, we found 5 knives. This is outside my front door. Okay. It's dangerous. That place needs to be blocked off. It needs to be chain link fenced. One of the reasons they want to open it up is because they say fire trucks can get through there easier. Well, by coming down Pasadena, Normandy, and Varden Way, you can get there just about as quick as you can if they cut that road and come through between the 2 hotels. It's probably not 5 seconds different time. Okay. It needs to be blocked off. So that's it.
Thank you, sir.
If you want, that chunk of property in front of my house is 75 feet by 40 feet. I'll make you an offer on it just to keep that from being opened up.
Seems to be the vibe tonight. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Brian Williams.
And then who's next, Stacy, after that?
And after that, Steve and Sue Moore.
Brian?
Madam President, Commissioners, I'm actually here representing the Barber Valley Neighborhood Association,
Fabulous.
and I have some testimony.
Okay. If that's, then you get 5 minutes. Thank you.
I get 5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Good evening, President Pickering and Commissioners. My name is Brian Williams, and I reside at 4069 Shakespeare Way, Boise, Idaho. As a director of the Barber Valley Neighborhood Association, I'm here to provide testimony on the FY25-29 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan on behalf of BVNA. BVNA would first like to thank the ACHD Commission and staff for working not only with our neighborhood, but all neighborhoods to identify important mobility concerns and opportunities for improving safety and the livability of our communities. We urge ACHD to continue to listen to, trust, and rely on those who live with and experience the transportation system in their neighborhoods and are impacted by it every day. While BVNA has a number of concerns about the streets within our neighborhood boundaries, we also understand and appreciate the magnitude of the challenge ACHD faces every year to address concerns across all of Ada County with a finite budget. In early 2023, ACHD adopted the Barber Valley Neighborhood Transportation Plan, following months of public outreach and planning to identify several mobility needs within the neighborhood, all of which address safety concerns that are present today on a few key corridors, primarily Warm Springs Avenue and Park Center Boulevard, 2 corridors that join together to bifurcate our neighborhood. There are no new alignments proposed, no vehicle capacity enhancements envisioned, and no maintenance issues raised in our neighborhood plan. After realizing that none of the neighborhood plan's recommended projects made it into the FY24-28 5-year work plan, BVNA submitted a letter to ACHD dated February 5th, 2024, requesting that 2 key projects from the 2023 neighborhood plan be added to the FY25-29 integrated 5-year work plan. 1, Warm Springs traffic calming and complete street from Park Center to Highway 21. This effort encompasses 2 projects from the neighborhood plan. And 2, Park Center bike facilities between Bound Way and the Warm Springs roundabout, which addresses a bike project and a pedestrian project in the neighborhood plan and would improve the currently high stress, unprotected and unbuffered bike facilities on Park Center. On August 5th, 2024, after identifying that no new projects were added to the Barber Valley planning area in the draft integrated 5-year work plan, BVNA submitted a follow-up request to ACHD reiterating the need to get these important projects added to the draft integrated 5-year work plan. We appreciate that ACHD recently added several future projects to the draft FY25-29 integrated 5-year work plan earlier in September, illustrating that while there may not be funding to address all of the needs, ACHD at least recognizes that the needs are present. We believe it was staff's intent with these latest integrated 5-year work plan additions to incorporate the neighborhood plan projects, and we would respectfully ask that staff carefully review the integrated 5-year work plan project descriptions so they can match the intent and the quality of the project descriptions your staff carefully crafted within the 2023 Barber Valley Neighborhood Transportation Plan, as the current descriptions seem a bit vague. We're glad to see ACHD has also recently added an intersection-specific project at Millbrook and Warm Springs as a future project in the draft integrated 5-year work plan because improvements at that intersection are definitely needed. In fact, we would urge the commission to accelerate improvements at that intersection. We believe that aggressively accelerating the construction of a roundabout at this intersection would be consistent with the Barber Valley specific plan and the ACHD master street map, both of which call for this intersection to be a roundabout. As you're likely aware, at midday on Monday, September 9th, 2024, there was a fatal crash at that intersection of Warm Springs and Millbrook. While we don't know the circumstances surrounding that incident, those of us that live in the Barber Valley and that have children that attend the Barnyard Daycare located at that intersection, that have children that cross that intersection to get to and from Dallas Harris Elementary School, and that try to use this intersection for our basic daily travel needs, know that the highway-like design of Warm Springs in this area promotes high-speed vehicle travel. We witness these high speeds and the near misses and are aware of other crashes at this intersection. This intersection presents a number of challenges and safety concerns for those traveling both inside and outside of a motor vehicle. Am I over my 5 minutes?
Yeah, did you have a closing statement really quick, Mr. Williams?
Let's see. Let me go ahead and cut to the chase. We urge ACHD to engage the neighborhood on a holistic approach to improving safety on Warm Springs and not wait until the later years of the current integrated 5-year work plan to get started. Challenges and safety concerns for Barber Valley residents are there today.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
I do have a question for you.
Certainly.
So, and I know you guys are so involved and you understand the process better than a lot of folks across the county, but did you elevate your priorities to your city council member representative and how did, because I think oftentimes we take so much stock in the city's priorities as well. And I just wanted to see if you had any conversations with folks from the city and the mayor's office at all about these priorities.
I actually had some testimony to give to that I had to skip.
Perfect.
That
Fabulous.
I can read. We understand that the city of Boise recommended a Barber Valley project and ACHD staff did not consider it a priority. We understand that the municipality's priorities and recommendations weigh heavily on staff's recommendation, yet in this case, it did not seem to be the case.
Do you mind sharing which project?
That was the Warm Springs Avenue, State Highway 21 to Park Center Boulevard roundabout.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any other questions for Mr. Williams? All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And after the Moores, we'll have Alicia McAndrews and Missy McClenahan. Do we have the Moores?
Yes, not.
Nope, we're gonna go. So Alicia.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam President and Council Commission members. My name is Alicia McAndrews. I live at 2551 South Old Hickory Way in the Barber Valley. And I couldn't say anything better tonight than Brian Williams already said. So I come up here to echo what he said. I'm a parent. I am on the PTO at Dallas Harris, and every conversation I have at school and in the neighborhood is regarding the Millbrook Warm Springs intersection. So I'm here tonight to urge you to please accelerate the construction of the roundabout at Mill Springs and Warm Springs and Millbrook. There are so many kids crossing that intersection, and it's true, the crossing guard gets flipped off and there's so much speeding. It's just a really dangerous intersection. And it's kind of this perfect place where it has great access to the green belt, and lots of traffic from the school as well. So I don't know where there was a breakdown in terms of priorities getting communicated to the city, to the county, to you all. But I think it's one where it really needs to be elevated. If project requests came in, perhaps after the school or before the school opened, it just opened last year. I really think it needs to take another look at and have further consideration to advance and accelerate the construction of the roundabout before 2029.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Andrews, thank you.
Missy?
She left.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
So we'd go next to online with Catherine Nice.
Clancy, did you want to
Oh.
comment?
He said just public comments.
Oh,
I was on.
Oh, you want both?
You were on
integrated 5-year work plan.
Oh, okay.
Okay, both. I'm sorry.
So we'll have Clancy and the lady in the back.
Okay.
And then we'll switch to online.
So I'd like to speak as for Treasure Valley Cycling Alliance,
Oh,
and then
okay.
also as myself. So I don't know if you'll give me an extra few minutes there. Clancy Anderson, speaking on behalf of Treasure Valley Cycling Alliance. My address is 4611 North Shirley Avenue, Boise, Idaho, 83703.
Clancy, just before you get started, are they different points or are they
Yes.
very much, okay. Then I'll
Well,
give you more time.
mostly good. Treasure Valley Cycling Alliance appreciates ACHD's current direction in planning and constructing great transportation projects for all road users. These provide meaningful changes that will increase safety for all, including safe routes to school. But before I get to the TVCA's recommendation, I have a snapshot of the integrated 5-year work plan from 15 years ago. And you guys have copies of those that were approved in 2009 and 2010. Here's a selected list that were approved in May of 2009 for the 2010-2014 integrated work plan, along with their current status. The Kootenai pedestrian improvements was completed in 2023. Collister ped and bike improvements approved in 2022 was supposed to be 2028. Now it's been pushed to 2029 for construction. That one will be almost 20 years by the time it's completed. Glenwood and Riverside sidewalk to Glenwood Bridge, never completed. Hill Road west of Pierce Park, a sidewalk and bike lane improvements, never completed. In 2009, 22 community projects were on the integrated 5-year work plan. And in 2010, that had been chopped to 2 for one reason or another. And now the current plan has 100 plus. We realize there are many variables to why these and other projects have been delayed or shelved, but to still be talking about these projects almost 15 years later is the reason why the bike lobby and other advocates become involved in outreach or show up to testify. With that said, you as a commission and as an organization are moving the needle in the right direction. We do appreciate ACHD's helping to identify safety issues via the safety team and their responsiveness to fixing those concerns or ones brought forward by citizens. We also appreciate ACHD is committed to installing temporary improvements with each new neighborhood traffic calming concept. Combined with the planned projects in the integrated 5-year work plan, it shows that ACHD understands that safety is paramount for all road users. So please continue in this direction and please vote to approve the integrated 5-year work plan. Now as myself, many of my sentiments echo what I said on behalf of TVCA, but I have a few more. Today I rode parts of Collister, Northwest Bikeway, Ellis, Franklin, 18th and 11th bikeways or future bikeways, plus the Bannock bike lane. My son, who will never drive, was also part of that bike commute to downtown, plus back to work at 36th Street, Albertsons, all via bike. My day will end with about 19 miles, mostly on a bike network that is comfortable to ride on. Not everyone has these facilities available, so please continue to create a connected bike work that enables this for everybody. And I'm a little bit bummed out about the Collister plan being pushed back, but staff has been good. I'm working with Justin a little bit on some improvements to calm Collister. And so I think we'll get there eventually. So thank you.
Come on up.
Madam President.
Do you mind? Yeah, thank you.
Madam President and Commissioners, my name is Kim Hoppy. I'm representing the Hillcrest Neighborhood Association. I live at 2918 South Garden Street, 83705. I'm here also for St. Andrews. I just want to point out that Elder Street is a commercial street. Two hotels are going up, and ACHD made a staff decision to punch through to St. Andrews. St. Andrews was never meant to be a part of Elder Street or to be punched through. And we're wondering if there is any other option such as widening Elder Street, or that you put up the posts that let emergency vehicles through and not hotel traffic through. If you've been on St. Andrews, you know how narrow it is. You know, people park on the street on either side. The next thing I'd like to talk about is with a change in the IFWYP school from public school to a preschool and special ed school, the students in that neighborhood are going to have to either go to Whitney or Hillcrest. Those walking to Hillcrest will have to cross Roosevelt. We have a big problem with Roosevelt Street. We need traffic calming there. There's an iffy intersection that goes up over the canal at Hillcrest and Roosevelt, which is very hard to see. You don't have a clear line of sight. I've been there on my bike. I was there last week or last night, and it's sketchy. I'd also like to thank you for the work you did on the manhole covers on Roosevelt. Those were great. And thank you for your finishing the sidewalk on Orchard Street where a commercial tire went in, and cleaning up the sidewalk as you get down to on Orchard, as you get down to Overland. We're most looking forward to a traffic crosswalk there on Malad Street across from Dennis Dillon from the Maverick. I see people crossing that all the time, and it's just frightening. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldthorpe?
We've heard several times tonight about the St. Andrews.
Yes.
And so I thought I'd interject here that I think that the commission ought to be able to hear more about this before the staff decision, which it is usually a great decision. I mean, I just don't know anything about it, but perhaps we could find out more about that and discuss it.
Before we get to that, there's another item that Ms. Hoppy mentioned, and that is the crosswalk on Roosevelt is actually included in the Nez Perce project, but because it's called Nez Perce, we don't necessarily, it's actually going to be. And fortunately, after making lots of noise, the staff has actually moved it up one more year than it was in the draft plan. I wish they'd move it up even earlier because the demand and the issues that you're describing have been there for a long time. And so I appreciate that, but it's contained within the Nez Perce project. Thank you.
Director?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, this was the item that Commissioner Hanson brought up earlier about closing St. Andrew, and we will plan to bring a work session to you. This was a development application, and during that process, staff applied our adopted policy, as was noted by Commissioner Hanson earlier, for continuation of streets where you have two streets come up to a parcel. Our policy requires staff to require a connection through that parcel. So no public dollars will be spent on that connection. They are to be built by a developer, and there's certain improvements, and we'll show you through a work session on that, what it is, and talk about any options there. But this application has gone through the development process. We've made our recommendations. It's already been approved by the city of Boise. And then we started hearing the feedback that you've been hearing today. So
is there any way that at this point that anyone could ask for a waiver of our policy?
no, at this point in time, sir, Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, the with the exception of the city of Boise, where you've given them standing to make request at any point in time. At this point, the appeal period's long since passed on this application. That said, the commission has full authority to make whatever decisions it wants within the right of way. But at this point, there's nothing connected. It's not been built yet.
I want to get us back on track though.
Yeah, I would like us to have a full hearing on this because there were some flaws in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Want to get us back to the integrated 5-year work plan.
Stephen Hunt is here and
Stephen.
he made it.
Sorry, yeah, welcome, Stephen. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Stephen Hunt, Chief Development Officer, Valley Regional Transit. Madam President, members of the commission, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to come and speak on the integrated 5-year work plan. Thank you for considering the comments that we provided throughout the development process and assigning a design year for State Street from Collister to 36. That's an important first step in continuing to advance the development of the State Street multimodal corridor. As we mentioned in our previous comments, Valley Regional Transit has current transit amenity projects in the corridor that require coordination of planning and construction activities. One such project is the passenger amenity improvements at State and Willow, and this is within the project limits of the State and 36 corridor project that now has a design year for 2029. So thanks. The other two State Street projects, that State Pierce Park to Collister Lane and State 36 to 27th, are also critical to advancing the complete corridor vision. Between Pierce Park and Collister, Valley Regional Transit has two project concepts, that's State and Bloom and State and Marketplace, that will improve passenger amenities and multi-use paths along those sections. And the status of the current amenities depress transit ridership and use of alternative transportation modes along that section. State and 36 and 27th, State 30, yeah, that's right. State and 36 to 27th section also includes VRT projects at State and Whitewater and connects the current VRT projects at 23rd and 27th. Given the importance of this corridor and the need for coordinated funding and a coordinated funding approach, VRT will begin working with State Street Executive Team to convene a meeting of elected officials. And the purpose of that meeting will be to discuss priorities and funding strategies that can keep this project moving forward without limiting the region's capacity to pursue other priorities. VRT, ACHD, and other Treasure Valley partners have been successful in recent competitive federal grants. Several of these programs, including RAISE, will have future funding cycles, and VRT is prepared to support ACHD and other partners in pursuing these funding opportunities to meet the critical infrastructure needs of our region. To that end, VRT will continue pushing for completing design of the entire State Street corridor as soon as possible and looks forward to continuing our work with ACHD and other partners to that end. And that's all I had on the integrated 5-year work plan. But I did have one more comment, if I may.
Is it on a different topic?
It's on State Street ridership that I had mentioned last time to Commissioner McKinney that I promised to come back with the average load on the State Street service. And
Briefly, if you can share it really quickly.
And I just want to be happy to note that the trip with the highest average maximum load on Route 9 is at 3:15 in the afternoon. And last year, the average maximum load for that trip was actually 24 people on the bus at that time. VRT's full peak hour ridership between 3:15 and 4:15 in the outbound direction is we carry on average 51 people during that hour on State Street in that one direction. So just wanted to provide that update. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, and we look forward to convening that meeting, and so we can have more structure to future integrated 5-year work plans and how we need to sequence the rest of the corridor. So
thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to testify on this issue before we move to folks online? All right.
Catherine, you're up.
Catherine, for real this time. Thank you for being patient.
You're welcome. Madam President and members of the commission, I'm Catherine Nice, 6227 East Playwright Street, 83716. I'm urging the commission to consider acceleration of the construction of the roundabout at Millbrook. Please make it a high priority and save lives. SPO1 called for roundabouts all along Warm Springs Bypass and at either end of Park Center as it passes through Harris Ranch. The danger of the Millbrook intersection was obvious from the map, but the roundabout was not built. So now we are in another reactive rather than proactive situation. Taking these dangerous situations on a one-on-one basis seems like a waste of time when a full Warm Springs corridor study is necessary to develop a proactive, comprehensive plan. The Millbrook intersection is especially dangerous since it is on a curve. The school district and ACHD should have been more proactive before Dallas Harris School opened to assure the highest safety protocols for safe routes to school for the kids. But again, we're reactive. One person had to die for us to talk about this intersection. I hope we will not see a child lost before Millbrook roundabout is built. Please prioritize the Millbrook roundabout and consider Warm Springs corridor study. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Ashley Petz.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Beatty Petz. Thank you to the president and the commissioners for letting me speak tonight. I live at 3702 South Harris Ranch Avenue in Southeast Boise. And again, I would like to reiterate everything that has been said so far with the Millbrook and Warm Springs intersection, specifically because this is a school zone for Dallas Harris Elementary. I cannot emphasize to you how unsafe this intersection is. I live maybe a quarter mile from this intersection and will not use it. My kindergartner will be going to Dallas Harris starting next school year, and we will drive to school instead of using this intersection because it is so dangerous right now. I urge the construction of the roundabout to be moved up from 2029 to earlier or as soon as possible. But I would also like for ACHD to consider more temporary or short-term solutions that can be implemented now this school year to help with this intersection, specifically because, like has been already mentioned, there are so many kids who are using this on a daily basis. There's a daycare that's 100 feet away from this intersection where kids go to recess every day, including my kids. And as the crossing guards from this year and last year have both already said, it's too unsafe right now for them to even be standing out there on the side of the road. So please consider scooting this roundabout out from 2029 to sooner, and whatever you can do to influence this intersection to make it safer for our kids who live in this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have Marissa Keith.
Marissa.
Hi, this is Marissa Keith at 3279 South Cloverdale in Boise. I'm the president of the Southwest Ada County Alliance Neighborhood Association. And I've written a few letters on the 5-year work plan and on these topics in general over the last year or two. And I guess I'll just take them one by one. Our first ask coming from our transportation.
Marissa, I hate to interrupt you, but are you representing the association tonight?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Our first issue, I guess, coming from the Transportation Committee and through the board was asking that the pedestrian crossing on 5 Mile and K-Bar-T be moved up. 5 Mile is already a road that has been widened to 5 lanes for, I don't even know how long, 10 or 15 years at this point. There is plans for there to be a pedestrian crossing in there when the bikeway is improved and signed, but that is sometime in the future. And right now, there is no pedestrian crossing in that entire mile stretch. So you either go up to Victory or down to Overland, or you try to cross a 5-lane road somewhere in the middle and hope that you can skirt traffic. So I think that is really the neighborhood association's number one ask, is for there to be a pedestrian crossing there sooner rather than later. There's the K-Bar-T. I think if a cheaper option, there is a fire station there where there already is a pole and a mast. If something could be done there for cheaper, that would be an option as well. But something needs to be done in that area before somebody is hit there. That area, there's the library there, there's the neighborhood activity center down on Overland. And so there's just a lot of pedestrian activity along that section of 5 Mile. The other ask is on Maple Grove between Victory and Amity. So that section of Maple Grove design, it's supposed to go to 5 lanes. Design was approved by the commission, I don't know, 2 years ago or so. Just after that design was approved by the commission, we had a subdivision go through the development process, and that developer included in his plans a walking path to the backside of West Junior High. And as soon as that got in the pipelines, we worked with the city council to make sure the sidewalks and the walking path were put in a public easement so that the future HOA could not prevent students from using those pathways to get to and from school. The only way to legally get to West Junior High from Maple Grove is to walk all the way up Maple Grove to Victory and then down Trabuco. Some kids do cut through Mergudio Park, but that's not, it's city-owned property. It's not a legal pathway. It's muddy in the winter. It's not an ideal situation. This pathway will be paved, and it provides a direct connection to the west side there. I did contact the school, so they are aware of it. I need to follow up with them because right now there's a chain link fence across that pathway. The subdivision is still under construction, so there's not that many houses there right now. But in the future, the South Cole Neighborhood Association, where the subdivision actually is, could work with the city of Boise to get a grant to help the school construct a pathway from that subdivision to the school. So our ask is that a extra pedestrian crossing be placed at the entrance of that subdivision, which is Middle Fork Road, to facilitate children or students walking or needing to cross Maple Grove. And these are junior high kids. They're impulsive. They are going to take the quickest route. There is two pedestrian crossings, one that's identified a little bit to the south, one that's a little bit to the north, but these kids are most likely going to take that most direct route. And so I have tried to converse with staff and the previous director about this and have not gotten anywhere. And so I'm hoping the commission will direct staff to look into this. Right now, I believe it's still Maple Grove is in the design phase. Construction is not even set, I don't know, I think 2028. So it's not something that's going to cost as much if we do it now than if we have to come back in 5 or 8 or 10 years and put something in then. I would just rather have it wrapped into the larger project. The third ask is to include a school zone. I mean, ideally we would want a school zone where this pedestrian crossing is on Maple Grove, but also to include a school zone at Trabuco in front of the Boise School District campus. There is not one there now. Traffic's going 45. There's a stoplight with a pedestrian crossing, and there is also a pedestrian crossing in front of Veolia and the Boise admin office. Last winter, we had a child hit on Cloverdale at LaGrange where this same situation is replicated, where we had a high-speed road. There was not, there was a pedestrian crossing, but there was no school zone, and cars were speeding through there and not stopping. We see the same thing happening on Victory, and I would like ACHD to be proactive because I drive there every single day. We live in West Ada District, but we open and roll to Boise. So although I would love to send my kid to walk and bike, I have to take him and pick him up every single day from this campus. And there are children crossing that road with these cars. Yeah.
So we're at time.
Okay. So those are my 3 asks, and I would love it if you could address that tonight. Thank you.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Just quickly, Marissa, I didn't know if you noticed, but your commissioner's magic wand was at work earlier today. And the Maple Grove ask has been completed and approved, and there's a new red dot on the 5-year work plan at that spot. I'm saying this all facetiously because I know we've discussed it and we had approved it. It just hadn't shown up yet, but it's there now.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, I know. We'll talk about, is there
Okay.
anyone else online that would like to address the commission on this item? All right, well, we had a lot of questions and concerns about the Millbrook and Warm Springs intersection. I'd like to invite staff to come up to just state the facts about where we're at with that. And then I'll turn it over to Commissioner Hanson really quick. Yes, I'm gonna close the public hearing. Thanks.
Madam President,
No,
Commissioners,
there's nobody else.
in regards to the Millbrook crossing, that is scheduled and designed in the later years. Of course, certainly it's at your direction if you guys wanted us to accelerate that.
Can you confirm it's 2029 for the design?
It is 2029,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. And where was it at with the city's recommendation at all in their priority list? Do you know offhand, Christy, generally? I mean, was it in like the top 50 or top 75? It's on the,
Ryan's got it memorized.
oh, Ryan. Okay, thanks, Ryan, for coming in.
Madam President, Commission, the project that was referenced by the Neighborhood Association, which is Warm Springs, Highway 21, does it say to Eckerd? The Park Center. So that would cover that section, is listed as their number 2 new request. However, it's listed as a roundabout corridor study. So it's not very specific to this intersection alone. But for the whole corridor, that's what was discussed.
Thank you, Ryan.
Madam President.
Hold on, let's have Commissioner Hanson go next. Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, so, and I've raised this a number of times over the past few years, and it's been a source of frustration. And one of the key reasons why I couldn't support the last year's update to the 5-year integrated work plan, because again, this was missing. Commissioner Goldthorpe and I came onto this commission, and we kept hearing from Barber Valley, we need to address Warm Springs that is being built through the Barber Valley. ACHD is insisting on reserving and having a future build of 5 lanes. So that was the error from our previous commission, because, and I've seen the draft concept. There was a draft concept by the developers in that valley. Mrs. Nice is correct. SPO1 contemplated a roundabout throughout this valley. It was ACHD's restriction, though, that the developer dedicate enough land for double lane roundabouts for 5 lanes. And so because we were insisting on an unnecessarily large dedication, the developer, when the developer was building, didn't build it. It would have been built. It should have been built. And this area would function as contemplated in SPO1 and SPO2 if it had been built that way. But because ACHD stubbornly refused, until finally we had enough commissioners who said, no, we should not, this will never be more than 3 lanes. By that time now, it falls back on the taxpayer. And so it gets way back at the end of the line. And so my plea to the commission is, based on those facts and the history of the Barber Valley, this should have been built. We should accelerate this. We should put this as if it was, and to do it as soon as we can. There's designs out there already. The developer probably has some. There's a Warm Spring Avenue concept plan that was included in the SPOs. We should build the roundabout, and we should have a rapid implementation project in the meantime, and we should initiate the scoping of that segment, which wouldn't take as long nor be as comprehensive because a lot of the work's already done. So I would hope that we can do that at this point. And there are things in the 5-year work plan that can move in order to make this happen. And so I would ask that you do that. And that history doesn't get told because there's just been enough turnover, but at least Commissioner Goldthorpe and I can remember when we finally said, no, we're not going to have 5 lanes. But by that time, it was too late for the developer to build it.
Commissioner McKinney?
Well, thank you. I was just going to ask if the suggestion was made by an earlier citizen as an interim measure at Millbrook to put in a 4-way stop until such time as, the roundabout can be built. Whether the roundabout is moved up or how much it is moved up or whatever is done there, it would seem to me that could be a pretty quickly done project and not terribly expensive. So that's something that can be dealt with. It's the big question for me here right now is these individual points that have been brought up about the 5-year work plan strike me as the sort of thing that we need to discuss one by one in kind of a work session format rather than here as we're looking at approving the whole 5-year work plan or not. I have specific concerns about the 5-year work plan itself as well, but to address all of the issues, we'd be here all night. And that's not really what this hearing is about, I don't believe. And so this is just kind of an up or down vote on the whole thing, it seems to me, rather than taking it piecemeal and trying to sort of reinvent the wheel on the fly here. That doesn't really work. But I believe our director has some comments to make probably on the Millbrook question.
So before I turn it over to Ryan, I want to add on to your point, Commissioner McKinney. So I think I'm in full support of evaluating what short-term safety measures we can put into place. And I want to just elevate, because I think I'm very sensitive to the fact that folks are like, we need solutions now, especially with the school year coming back online, right? And after the holidays. But I just want to clarify what that means in reality for doing a full build of a roundabout. Like that is not something that can be done in a year. It cannot. It literally, it physically, fiscally, logistically cannot happen. Unfortunately, all of us wish all of these things could happen tomorrow or in a couple weeks time. And I just want to elevate the fact that even for impactful, somewhat short-term solutions like the mini roundabout on Rose Hill, that was a year out at least that we had to design, and then now there's been a huge build out and that still is being constructed today. And that's been largely the whole summer. So I just want to elevate that. Of course, I'm very supportive of having something faster, especially if it's as simple as a short-term solution as a 4-way stop, which is not the point of this this hearing tonight. But I want to say that the timelines that folks can expect, having a full build roundabout in a 2-year plan that has not been actively scoped and have a concept today on the shelf is very unlikely unless tons of things were to be adjusted, which again, to Commissioner McKinney's point, would be sussed out in a work session with consultation with our city partners, because they would have a huge voice in that, because it's also their plan as well. So very sympathetic to the cause. But Ryan, did you have anything else to add? Because I would like to, we've been going on for a long time.
No, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, exactly what you said. We'd like to bring back a discussion on what temporary treatments could be done there. And ultimately, the good news for you is this is a snapshot in time, and tomorrow as soon as we post this, we begin the new one. So we can continue the conversation. We can make adjustments through budget adjustments that are upcoming. We can look at these things in many different ways. So
Madam President, just to clarify, the plan calls for design in 2029. That means construction is sometime in the 2030s. We can move up design. We can move up design to at least 2027. That's 3 years from now, especially since a lot of the groundwork has already been done. This is not rocket science. There has been roundabouts constructed in the Barber Valley by the developer. They know how they're built. So I think we can move design up by at least 2 years and have construction as soon thereafter as possible. I'd say by 2028. So I don't think that's difficult, especially since we're not starting from scratch. This concept's been around for at least 25 years.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yes, I represent Southwest Ada County, but one of the reasons that I made the decision to run for this office had to do largely with what was going on at the time in Barber Valley. Commissioner Hanson was very kind to mention me in his comments. I would ask any of you who have the Barber Valley Harris Ranch History coffee table book that is beautiful to read the foreword, and you'll understand that. And with having said that, I would go right along with what's been said about speeding this up.
So what does that mean exactly?
Just means the sooner the better.
Maybe at a later work session, because I feel like that's a departure from what we need to address for tonight. So, commissioners, is there
Madam President?
motion? Commissioner McKinney?
I will make a motion. First, I want to make a comment. The concern was expressed earlier when we were discussing that Linder Road project. Where are we going to get the money for it? Of course, that's always the issue. I think there are some imbalances in our prioritization of spending, and some of those are apparent in our integrated 5-year work plan. Nevertheless, it was stated this is a snapshot in time, and I'm going to, I'm in favor of a variety of changes to it. Nevertheless, I would move that we approve the integrated 5-year work plan as presented. And just as an additional comment, the testimony that we've heard from citizens about specific issues in this work plan, our staff has heard all of those comments. All those things are going to be considered, and we will, as was mentioned, starting tomorrow morning, the new second round of changes, or the next round of changes to the integrated 5-year work plan will commence. And how exactly it will change remains to be seen, but that's the process. So anyway, that's my motion.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded.
Madam President,
Commissioner Hanson?
I'll make a substitute motion to approve the integrated 5-year work plan, but to accelerate the construction of a roundabout at Millbrook to no later than 2028, with design prior to that time, and initiate scoping for the rest of Warm Springs Avenue between Starview and Highway 21. If I can get a second for that,
That's a lot. We usually don't do that amount of things, projects. That's like 3-4 projects right there.
it's just a scope.
You said construction in 2028, did you not?
What's that?
Did you not say construction in 2028?
Construction 28.
That's a lot of
Yeah,
elements.
I feel like we need a work
For-
session.
Then
for-
that's,
For well, then I can't vote for the motion.
I just want to speak to the point that when we had the integrated 5-year work plan, our staff and the cities, we've weighed in heavily on what's in this plan to simply move something forward. Although I completely agree that it should be, we need to evaluate then what would be decelerized, right? What would be pushed back? And again, that's something that you can't just say it from the dais with what very little information we have. It's not the point of this hearing tonight. And although I perfectly agree with you all that something needs to be happening, this is not the time for us to debate what should be decelerized without knowing, not something that should be accelerated without knowing what should decelerize to make accommodations for that adjustment. So,
Madam President.
Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, I did actually suggest to staff there are quite a number of projects we could decelerate in the area I represent, including on Overland and on Vista, because the demand wasn't there. I think this is unique because the reason it's not already built lies solely with this agency. This agency has amended that. It fixed it a number of years ago, but now we can't pretend that it's not been built because of this agency's action. And it's like every other project that has to take a 10-year 20-year slow move to finally fix. These are folks, these are taxpayers who've been paying and paying and paying their impact fees. They've been paying a lot of impact fees. All those houses are new. They pay impact fees. None of this can be paid for by impact fees. Those impact fees are going to pay for purchasing homes on Linder and other areas. They can't even use the impact fees that they're paying in order to bring safety to their own neighborhoods with a concept that was adopted, that was conceived of when SPO 1 and SPO 2 were adopted. And it's just so frustrating. And staff has heard me, commission has heard me every year when we deal with this. And so it's not new, and that's why I can't vote for the motion.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. All right. Well, with that, we have one final item, and that's just general public communications. So if anyone would like to address us on any type of topic.
Yep, we have Mr. Gannon, Representative Gannon.
Okay, Representative Gannon, come on up.
Thank you. I'm here today probably as an individual, but John Gannon, 1104 Johnson Street, Boise. And we had a wonderful open streets event on Sunday. It was successful. And I think as everybody could see, we have a neighborhood that is very active. And Latah Street is a problem that keeps growing because of traffic increases. In the last 20 years, it's grown substantially. And it's also become a little more hazardous because of Alpine and Latah, where the Still and some other restaurants have been located. So Commissioner Goldthorpe put his finger on it earlier when he was talking about the pedestrian crossing. The pedestrian crossing, which was wonderful, Commissioner Hansen and Pickering worked for. The problem is that probably only half the people that are crossing the street, the parking lot's on one side of the street, and they all have to cross over to the restaurant, etc. They don't press the button. They're just kind of walking across back and forth from the parking lot. And so I think that Latah and the neighborhood have developed to the point where traffic calming is appropriate, and also speed limit reduction is appropriate. 30 miles an hour, and you got these people walking back and forth. It's not the commission's fault. Not really. I went to the neighborhood meeting, supposedly it was 4 or 5 years ago, and supposedly they didn't need parking. That's what they said. Everybody was going to walk and bike, but they didn't. So you have 30 or 40 cars that come and park in that parking lot across the street. So it's nobody's fault. It is what it is. And I think this justifies a change the speed limit and maybe some traffic calming, especially you go up the hill over those railroad tracks and then come down, and suddenly that's where a pedestrian may or may not be. They also serve alcohol, and which is fine. But unfortunately, 10 o'clock at night, it's dark. They may be wearing dark clothing and come out, oh yeah, just gonna cross the street, and bam. Kootenai Street happened because, and it was very good, and that turned out very well, by the way. But it happened after there was a child killed. And I don't want to see, or at least we want to work as hard as we can to make sure that the traffic that's happening in this particular area doesn't result in some kind of serious issue. And one other thing on the St. Andrews, which these folks have talked to me about more than once. There was never a plat for this connection. There was never anything, any legal document that said over the last 50 years that this residential subdivision, which is platted, would be connected to the commercial properties or whatever properties were on Elder Street. For a long time, it was just vacant. But so there's nothing there that would indicate that there was some kind of easement or some kind of street that was proposed over the last 50 years. So I just throw that out, and I realize you're going to have to work on that and go back and forth.
Thank you, Representative Gannon.
Thank you very
Yep.
much.
And we can't take, just so everyone knows, we can't take official action during public comment, but
Sure.
I appreciate you being here and elevating those two items, and we'll continue to explore what can be done on LATOP. So thank you,
Great.
sir.
Thank you.
We also have Miss Grace Lee here.
Welcome back. And you don't have a huge poster for us this time.
No, I actually made it a little cleaner. So she gave it to us. So it's all pretty. My name is Grace Lee, and I live on 6915 West Grand Rapids Drive in Meridian, Idaho. And I wanted to say thank you for having me back. I was suggested to come to here and to be able to listen to everything, and it's really been educational. You have so many projects going on, and you have to balance all the budgets and stuff. And I know that our little intersection is not on the plan as of now, and I'm sure it'll move up the roster and stuff. But we were hoping if it was possible to be either rapidly planned, and if it's that is not possible, if there's anything we can do to stopgap a solution. If you look at the top right corner and the bottom left corner, I think those are our biggest priorities in this area. Literally, as we bike the gravel, you'll just slip and you might fall into the street. Same thing on that bottom left corner. It's actually, I don't know if you can tell in the photo, but it's slanted right all the way up against the line where the cars drive. So if kids are moving through there with their bikes, skates, even walking, and they slip, they will definitely hit a car with their heads. So if there's anything we can do to just level those out or to make them smoother until something can be put in place, that would be such a blessing over there. If we can do better, that would obviously be great. So that's kind of what we were hoping to do. If there's anything that I could be told so I can tell our community what we can do on our side, we have plans to educate students at the schools to walk better in those crossings and things like that. That's something we're trying to do on our end. But if there are any other suggestions we could take back to the community and say, these are things you need to do to keep your kids safe, that would really be appreciated as well. And I just want to thank you again for having me. And I know that Heather Hill has already contacted with you here at ACHD and everything. So I appreciate all the work you're putting in.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I'm sure our staff have some ideas on how we can get this accelerated and working with the city. Thank you. Anybody else?
We do have somebody online, Lachlan.
Yeah, hi, Madam President and Commissioners. My name is Lachlan Kinsella, and I reside at 3221 South Shadywood Way in Boise, near the intersection of Millbrook Way and Warm Springs Ave. I apologize, I meant to comment earlier. In November of 2023, my wife reached out to ACHD via the TELUS online comments regarding safety concerns of the intersection. She did initially receive a follow-up email from staff at ACHD stating that the rectangular rapid flashing beacon is very effective and that ACHD was currently installing flashers for early December of 2023. My wife then emailed a follow-up, she then sent a follow-up email that I assisted with. As a civil engineer, I provided specific information regarding the inadequate sight distance at this intersection, specifically for vehicles traveling westbound. We did not receive a follow-up response from ACHD staff. My family and I cross this intersection on a daily basis, whether it's to access the green belt, whether it's to run or bike. You know, I have an 8-year-old, a 12-year-old. They push the button for the RFB, and you know, half the time cars don't stop. I usually have to like wave my hand or just walk out into the road. So just following up with you know, all the other comments, if you could expedite this before 2028, My wife sent an email to Madam Commissioner and Madam President and Commissioner Hanson, just regarding alternatives. I like the idea of a four-way stop. There's also, you can remove the trees on the northeast corner to improve the sight distance. I provided a specific exhibit. And then as maybe a cheaper alternative that could be built sooner, you could extend the pathway on the south side of Warm Springs Ave farther west of Millbrook, and maybe relocate the RRFB crossing to Barnside Way. And then you would obviously have to relocate the flashers as well, but that might be a cheaper interim solution. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Lachlan. Appreciate you sticking around for us.
Thanks.
All right. Oh, Clancy, did you want, oh, and then another, there's a few others in the back? Yeah, okay.
Clancy Anderson, 4611 North Shirley Avenue, Boise. After hearing a couple comments about the pedestrian hybrid beacons that are not being adhered to by both cars and by pedestrians, I echo those sentiments, because there's one of two things that happen. Is like what they said, that the pedestrians hit the button, nothing ever changes, so there's no cars coming, so they just go. The other thing that happens is what happened to me the other day. I was with my son. We were crossing Whitewater Boulevard at right there at Pleasanton at the pedestrian hybrid beacon, and I pressed the button and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. Well, the cars stop, and she starts yelling out the window, "You need to go." Well, it took probably 15 to 20 seconds for the the walk signal to appear, and so I think there's a timing issue. And I know ACHDs received, and they're probably standard timing, but it just seems every time someone brings up pedestrian hybrid beacon, there's a mismatch of it being used or abused or not followed. And so I think that's something that maybe ACHD should look at, even if it is a standard timing. Maybe there's some alternatives out there that could be trialed. Another one is River Street, right there by Paya Brewing. That one people hit all the time, and it takes forever. It takes probably 45 seconds or something for when there's no cars there. So anyway, that's it.
Thanks, Clancy. Ma'am in the back, would you like to come up, please?
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Nisha Bellinger. I live at 3214 South Warden Way. I'm here with many of my neighbors. Steve just spoke a little bit ago. Also here to see if you all can please address the intersection between St. Andrews and Elder. I want to share that I did not get any information about the council hearing either. We were waiting for a chance to go and weigh in on the project. So the hotels are now being built. We are not happy about that. But now the intersection will further increase the noise, traffic, and we are extremely concerned about the property value as well. So I'll be brief. I'll stop there. And I know some of my neighbors also have some thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Madam President and Commissioners. Thank you for having us here and letting us speak our concerns, but I am here on the St. Andrews issue also.
Your name and address, please.
Sorry, my name's Teresa Sorelli and I live at 3811 Normandy Drive, so I'm one street away from St. Andrews. But I have a concern because my neighbors are going to have an issue with the traffic that's going to increase on that street. It is not wide enough. You guys saw the picture. There's cars that have to park on the street because their driveways are not deep enough. So their front yards are already close to the street. There's not enough room to have the driveway extended to park their cars in their property. So if the two cars are parked on both sides of the street, if a fire truck has to come through, it's going to hit the cars. I would encourage you all to walk that street. If you want to have a walking meeting, I would be happy to set it up because I think it's really important to have everybody see this. I know somebody mentioned earlier that we've passed the appeal process. We didn't even know that there was a hearing. So how can we know that there is an appeal process? So that's where we would really like to have this reconsidered, maybe have another meeting on this so that we can have the full facts come to light here. I know that in your 5-year plan, you're mentioning that the patient or the build safe, build together. This didn't happen. This decision did not happen that way. So that's all I had to say. Thank you. Thanks. And I know there's several more.
Come on up.
Hi, my name is Charmel Kubik. I live at 3914 West St. Andrews Drive. I don't do this very often, so we received no notification. We're really concerned about Elder coming into St. Andrews because, like she said, our streets are very, very narrow. The neighbor across the street from me, if they widen that, it'll put the street right up to his door because he's really close to the street. We already have people that speed down our street and they come down Roosevelt. By the time they get to my mom's house on Roosevelt, they're going 80 miles an hour. They are cutting Catalina, Normandy, Pasadena, and St. Andrews to cut through to go over to IFWYP. If the fire trucks are going to come, they're going to come from the airport, come down Elder, or they're going to come up IFWYP. So there's no reason to open that street. We have a ton of kids that ride their bikes, walk, play on the street. We have adults that ride their bikes and walk. We have our animals. And I mean, we have kids, we have people that are speeding like 50 miles an hour down their streets already. And if you open it up, it's distant to Elder down to St. Andrews to Roosevelt or vice versa. And it makes it, excuse me, makes it really hard. I don't do this.
You're doing great.
And we are concerned about our kids, about our families on that street. And we would like to have, and like I said, we were never notified, so we didn't know there was an appeal process. So we would like to have another discussion about this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Jim Carmichael. I live at 3801 West St. Andrews Drive. Thank you, Madam President and Commissioners. Yes, we were never notified. Crime has increased in the neighborhood from the addition of the 2 motels that are there now. Opening that street up would increase incidents at the intersection of IFWYP and Elder. I was following behind Steve one day. He's got a nice little race car. Somebody just ran straight through the stop sign, almost took out his car. I caught up to him later and said, I got it on camera. The speed limit is 20 miles an hour in that neighborhood. Opening that up, the speed limit will probably go higher because people are going to speed through. More people are going to blast through that IFWYP and Elder intersection. It won't be safe. We might be coming back later on if that's opened up, bring in a class action suit because we weren't heard. People are going to be underground. It's not a good situation. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Sir, come on up. Oh, no, that was on the other open hearing item.
Okay, Steve Grotehouse, 3711 St. Andrews. I'm not as nervous.
Did you have something else to talk about tonight?
It's about St. Andrews again. We never got a notification either. Only about 1/3 of the neighbors in that area got one of those notifications. Okay, so we had no idea there was an appeals process, nothing at all. And that's what these other people are telling you.
Yeah.
We did not get a notification. Therefore, you should consider at least taking a look back, see if we can address it again. Give us a chance to talk. That's all. So anyways, that's about it. We're good. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I think when we have this work session, we'll be able to line out the process and the details as to why the city and our staff came to the conclusion that they did. And I think Commissioner Goldthorpe's point about appeal, that's largely, I think some folks are confused. And we'll clarify that at that work session without getting into the details. But with that,
Madam President, I just want to, since you all have made the effort of coming and we have your addresses, that you'd be notified of when our discussion is, our work session discussion. So you all know and you can come. And that then I think we explore what are solutions that ACHD can take. The city has created an entitlement. Action has been taken that didn't involve this commission. And so that's what we would discuss. What kind of actions can ACHD take? And we do take actions, as we heard. Sometimes we take action to close streets, and that might be an option, but that's so the question would be, what can ACHD do? You have to deal directly with the city on its processes.
thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
I think that's a great suggestion and we will absolutely do that. With that, meeting is adjourned.